Hey everyone, welcome to my first swirl compilation video. We're going to do everything swirls today. Swirls are the nemesis of many a melt and pour soap maker because they just are more complicated for us. Our melt and pour bases do not behave in the same way as the batter of a cold process soap maker. I'm going to concentrate today in this compilation video on swirling in a loaf mold. It's a very different technique than swirling in a slab mold, especially for melt and pour soap makers. So we have to do things a little differently. And I have several different demonstrations for you here. And a few are really good and some are what not to do. But there are some fun ways to swirl. That's one reason it is worth it to learn how to swirl melt and pour soap. It is fun and you can get some beautiful results if you practice. So without further ado, have fun and swirl some soap. Hey everyone, today we're going to work on a 2-color Acorn Swirl soap. And I'm hoping you'll join me. This is a really fun swirl to do. It's fairly easy if you follow the instructions and pay close attention to both your soap temperatures and the texture and feel of the soap. Because there's got to be a little bit more that goes into it other than temperatures, because some of our soap bases melt at different temperatures, so it can't all be exactly what I say or I do, or the originator of this swirl, which the channel Oakleaf and Acatillo, and I'm probably butchering the name, but they are the ones who originated this swirl, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, and I will leave a link to their channel, so you can see for yourself firsthand what the original idea I got for doing this one. So the colors you just saw me place into my little stirring beaker there. Bermuda Triangle from Mad Micas. And I put a little touch of Blue Moon Mica in there, which is a white interference mica. I'm sorry, it's a blue interference mica. It looks white, but in certain light or over a dark color or mixed in with a dark color, it looks blue, an iridescent blue. So I used about a half a teaspoon of the Bermuda Triangle and maybe a quarter of a teaspoon of blue mica, maybe less. I don't know, not much. Anyway, I could have used more and made it a little less transparent, but I wanted a little bit of transparency in there, translucency, so that when it swirls with the opaque white that I'll be using, you can really see a stark difference. So the fragrance oil I used at 1% is aloe water and sea kelp, which is Wholesale Supplies Plus. It's one of my all-time favorite go-to fragrances. I use it a lot for beachy, oceany type soaps because, first of all, I really love it. Second of all, it stays really clear. It's a clean, ocean-ish fragrance, but it doesn't have really a salty smell to it. It's more watery with a little, maybe a touch of fruit. I don't know the notes for that. I should have looked it up so I could tell you, but it's got an odd name, so it sounds weird. Aloe water and sea kelp. When I think of sea kelp, I just think of fishy. I don't know, salty, fishy. That may just be me. That may be the impression I get, but it is absolutely the opposite of that. It's fabulous. And it stays super clear in clear soap. You always have to start with a really good clear base, and I'm using Wholesale Supplies Plus Premium Crystal Clear soap base. That is my go-to for if I want it to look clear, which is most of the time. So that's my favorite base to use. I am not affiliated with them, but I will wholeheartedly recommend their soap bases. They are my favorite. I am affiliated with Mad Micas, and along with the links that you'll see to the products I used today, you'll see an affiliate link. If you go shopping through my link, I will receive a small percentage of that, but they have not paid me to say that their products are good. I just like them. So I ended up using all that I mixed up. I like, sometimes I mix it up together if I'm blending colors, and then just put a little in at a time till I like what I want. Sometimes I get a little reckless and just dump some in, or put it in without alcohol, even just because. It just depends on the day and how things seem to be behaving. You can get it mixed in without alcohol. It's just more likely to have lumps. And sometimes the design, it doesn't matter if there's a little bit of extra flex or something that happens, and sometimes works perfectly with the design you're going for. So anyway, I used 91% rubbing alcohol to mix the micas in, and about a teaspoon of the alcohol is what I had in there. So you see that I stir a lot. I did not speed it up this time. I kind of wanted you to get a better idea of how much I stir to make sure that the fragrance especially is really well incorporated. Yes, you do want the colorants incorporated as well, but it's more important for the fragrance to be blended in sufficiently in your soap base, because that on its own, if it's concentrated and gets on your skin, that could be unsafe for you or for your customers or for somebody that you're gifting this soap to. So I always go a little bit overboard with the stirring, but I'm also stirring. Typically, you see me have it sped up, but I stir fairly slowly, as you see. I'm just trying not to incorporate a lot of bubbles. You can usually rectify that just by spritzing with alcohol, like you see me do there. That time I was kind of spritzing just to watch it disperse, because it's cool. It's fun. I do it again and I'm showing you at the camera because I think it's cool and it's fun to watch. So especially when you have a nice kind of sparkly mica, it just looks pretty. I like to watch it swirl. This technique, the Acorn Swirl, as I said, discovered, I should say, maybe, by Oak Leaf and Ocotillo, not sure. She discovered it by accident, which I thought was really cool. And she was following a brambleberry tutorial on a several layer soap, and she got sidetracked and left the soap for longer than she was supposed to. I'm pouring this first layer here according to her instructions. Well, let me put a little caveat on that. I'm supposed to be pouring it at 120 or lower. That's the recommendation. And I was just a little bit over. I think it was at like 122, and I poured it anyway. And I was a little bit sorry later. It didn't mess with the soap. It just messed with me because it didn't cool as quickly as it should. She said, set the timer for 10 minutes. That is important to set a timer. It's too easy to forget. If it is not ready, you saw me touching it with the end of that little spatula. I didn't have a pencil eraser like she uses in the original video. So I'm using the end of that because it has the same kind of feel and shape to it as a pencil eraser. So that silicone is just a little rubbery enough. Okay, so you see me poking it here, and that's bouncing back at me a little bit like a trampoline. The first time I poked it, waves were created through the soap. That first layer that set up was very thin, and you could still see waves. You can also test it by blowing on your soap in the first layer, and if it ripples, it's too hot. You can't pour yet. You've got to let it set up for longer. So I set it up for 5 more minutes before I did this, and I had to go a little bit longer than that. I didn't show it on screen because I was frustrated with myself. Part of the issue with that is I live in Florida. It's hot, even with the AC on. It's hot. So that's something that you need to take into consideration. The other thing, as I'm swirling here, you see I'm using, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked with this, but you do want to take the opposite end of a spoon, not the part you eat with, the handle end, and punch it in all the way to the bottom. It's got to go all the way to the bottom, and you do one zigzag from one end to the other. Doesn't matter what corner you start in, but from one end to the other, you zigzag, and you make sure that you're scraping the bottom of that. You saw that a great big skin, the skin that was on the top of the blue, when you saw me poking at it, that came up, and I just pushed it back a little bit. I don't move it around a lot. You just do that and kind of leave it alone. But because I knew I kind of pulled a lot of the blue, I did give it a slight push backward, and I don't think I hurt anything in the process. And then I reset my timer for 5 more minutes. I ended up resetting it again for 5 more minutes because this I think was my own fault. I think I made a mistake with this. The white I chose, instead of just creating my own white like I do frequently and adding titanium dioxide, I was a little lazy because I was running a little low on titanium dioxide and didn't want to mix up more. I did add a little bit to the white, but I wouldn't have had enough to make a full opaque white on my own. So I used a white soap I had, a white soap base, detergent-free baby buttermilk from Wholesale Supplies Plus. And the reason detergent-free makes a difference is because the melting point is much lower. And that also means that it's going to take it longer to set up. So when I came back the first time, it was actually almost sticky on the top. It wasn't set up at all. And it was a different consistency. And I really don't recommend for beginners, for first trying this, that you use detergent-free soap or you use all detergent-free. I don't recommend mixing them. I feel like it just doesn't work as easily. It does work. The soap came out really nice, and I didn't have to really make many adjustments. I just had to really check my time that I was setting it up. But all of these were poured at a low temperature. The first one I said I went a little overboard, which made me wait. The second one I poured a little lower because I realized that it was detergent-free. And now you see me making the second swirl because that's all you do. You pour it. Please note, I didn't say it beforehand, but you can go back and look, that I poured along the outside edges both times when I poured over the second layer. You want to follow the outside edges because that is where it is set up the most, and you're not just going to pour it through. If it pours through right away, you will not get the same effect. It will start mixing underneath, and it will be a big, I won't say a big hot mess because sometimes mistakes happen and do really cool things. But after you pour it along the edges, pour the whole thing in there. This one, the second blue, I made sure it was at 120. And then you do one more zigzag, and then you can mess with it a little more. I didn't a lot. I certainly was not swirling or stirring. You don't want to do that. I kind of lifted up from the bottom because I could feel there was some stuff stuck down there. And I just put it in, punched it in, and scraped and lifted very carefully. The less you can move this, the better. But you can play with it, especially after you get the third layer on there. You can play with it a little. And if you can see what's going on and what you like or don't like about it, you can't always see, though, until you cut it. But you get a feel for it after a while. I haven't done these in a while, so I wasn't even sure I could do them again. But I kind of remembered the feel when I was doing that digging up, that action. I think it helped to bring up whatever was stuck on the bottom. And I think there's some spots in here. When you see me cut this, you'll see some areas with some really cool, unique looking waves. And I think that happened because I pulled up. I think I would have had a lot less of the interesting shapes and swirls in here if I had not done that. If I had only done the first zigzag, I don't think I would have had well, I know I wouldn't have had the same look, but I think it would have been a lot less interesting. The part about knowing your base. This is extremely important because you need to know what your melting point is. Crafter's Choice Premium Crystal Clear and most of the Crafter's Choice, or really all of them, I think, their melting point is it'll say on the website 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 120, yeah, to 125. So in that range is its melting point. I find that the detergent free is faster. I think I mentioned that earlier. It's closer to the 120 or even a little bit lower at times. And the clear seems to melt. The premium seems to have a little bit higher melting point, but not as high as some other brands. So you need to know if your brand's melting point is at 140, you're going to have a really hard time pouring it at 120, in my opinion. I know some of those set up really fast. The hotter you have to take it, the faster it's going to set up. So keeping that in mind as you're pouring, I'm not sure you could take it to 120 or below. She even said if you could get it down in the teens, it would be great. You want to watch for consistency. Let it get a little thick before you pour. Just a little bit. You don't want a big, glumpy, nasty, gel-like. But if it's a little gel-like and if it's a little thicker, it's going to swirl better for you. The thinner it is and the hotter it is, the more likely that your colors are just going to blend and make mud. Maybe a pretty mud, but it's not going to get the clarity or the distinctive swirls, I guess is a better word to use for that. Speaking of clarity, I want to point out while I'm showing these off a little as I'm cutting, by the way, I was really super excited when I was cutting these. I was doing a happy dance. I just didn't do it on film. Leaving that blue, the Bermuda triangle, leaving it a little transparent was so perfect. It really shows off, and you'll see when I come in a little bit closer soon after I get them all cut, and you can really see the sparkle of the blue moon. It really looks cool. Now here's where I discover that I messed up my Uncle Andy's. So this is in no way Uncle Andy's fault. This is my cutter, if you are not familiar with the soap guillotine. It's the perfect melt and pour soap cutter. It really, really works without breaking anything. But I knocked my measurer. The little knob you see down there measures how far away from the blade it is, so you know how thick your slices are going to be. And I had mine perfectly set up that in this mold I get 6 even slices. A little bit, like more than an inch. It's maybe 1.25 inches or something like that. I forget. I'll have to look at it. And here is my boyfriend trying to help me assess if they're really as chunky as they look or what's going on. He said, what about this piece? And what about that one? Which that one he brought in. I was like, that's not even the same mold. That's the little rectangle molds. But yeah, it was definitely much bigger. So I ended up with a little extra, a little sample size, about half the size of my normal bar. And it's mine. So I'm just going to use it for myself because I love that fragrance, and I'll get to use a really pretty swirl soap too. Yeah, I've got to fix that before I slice anything else. These are really chunky bars. Now, I didn't fill the mold totally up, so they're probably going to be equal in weight to what I normally cut, because I usually fill it to the brim and sometimes over. And I just didn't end up doing it this time. I think I misremembered the ounces that the mold holds. Yeah, can you see the blue moon mica shimmering? It looks like a little bit like glitter. It's not. There is some glitter in the white, so you might see that a little bit as well. I just did some Sparkle Plenty in that, but what's showing is the blue moon. I thought it came out so pretty with that. You can really see it in the video. In a moment, you're going to see some close-ups, and it's you don't see it in that as well. I mean, they're really pretty, but the lighting in my light box just doesn't catch everything really well, and I'm not great at adjusting the lighting in that thing, or in my phone. There's something I'm not perfect with it, but look at how the camera picks that blue moon up. It's gorgeous. So I guess the most important thing to say is you have to know what your melting temperature of your soap is. I do highly recommend the Wholesale Supplies Plus normally, but even more so for this. There are some people who will use a suspending base, and they have great success with that. And if you do that, if you try it, let me know what you think. I'm not a super fan of that base. I've used it before several times. I've tried swirling with it. I find better luck with just a lower temperature, like below your melting point, but not completely, gelled up, not creating soap on a stick, as the cold process soap makers say. If you have questions, if I've left any information out, please reach out to me, comment, message me, write on the community post if you like, because I want to give you all the information I can, and I may have forgotten something. I hope you learned something. I hope you like this. Let me know in the comments if you're going to try this. I really hope you do. Swirls are fun. They're weird, but they're fun. So thanks so much for stopping by. Please give it a like and subscribe if you wish. Thanks. Bye. Hey, everyone. We're going to jump right into this soap in a second, but I just want to mention quickly, I don't always have this lisp, but it will happen occasionally when my neck flares up from a previous accident. When my neck flares up, it sets my jaw off, and then my teeth don't match up. It just swells up, and it usually only lasts for a day or two, but this time it was a little bit longer, and so I waited a week and thought I better record anyway because I'm running out of time. So I apologize. This is a sort of fail. It's not a soap fail. The soap turns out just fine. It's just not what I would consider a true 3-color Acorn Swirl. It's not. It turns out okay. Even pretty, but as somebody who's trying to demonstrate a 3-color Acorn Swirl, this one doesn't do a great job, so it fails at that. But I'm showing it anyway to you for the opportunity to show you what went wrong so you can avoid it. I'm big on temperature pours, what temperature your soap is when you pour it, and timing and all of that. I harp on it a lot when I'm doing my videos, typically, and then I go and mess it all up this time. So you want to pour your first color. You want to pour all the colors fairly low in temperature. Right here, you need to set a timer. You'll get to read a little bit about why and how I know how important it is, and you'll see the difference between this and my 2-color swirl. Things happen, and it's too easy to forget what the timing is. I planned on setting a timer, but I forgot to bring my phone with me to my soaping area, and then got distracted, as you will read, and then I make fun of myself a little bit because it was like moving chunks around with this. It really was. You want to, when you saw me poking the layer there with the back end of this little rubber spatula, and that's the texture you want for testing it, you want it to bounce a little bit. When I poked it with this, it was just like a dud. It was absolutely not fully set up, just really close to it, because I waited too long. So typically you want to pour 120 or less for your first layer. You want to set a timer for 10 minutes and check and see if it has a thick enough skin, if it has a little bounce to it. If it ripples when you blow on it, it's not ready yet. People more often than not will pour too soon rather than too late. So I kind of went the other direction with this one. Then I'm going to pour with this one. I usually will pour it a little less hot. This one, I think I poured it like 116, 118, something like that. Well, maybe not. We'll see. Yeah, 117. There we go. And I could tell already when I came up and poked it that it was too far gone, but I wasn't going to remelt it and repour it. I wanted to see what I could do with it. And this is one of the things about this type of swirls. Well, any of them, you don't know what it's going to look like until you cut into it. So that's kind of part of the fun and part of the frustration sometimes. 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so is usually what it takes to get to that setup stage that's correct. And I could tell the minute I was swirling this too, it was going to be difficult. It felt so set up. It wasn't completely, but it felt like it was really close to being nothing but other chunks. Then you're gonna want to set a timer the second time. For this, obviously I sped through this. I didn't want you to sit around again waiting for soap to set up. I poured this one a little hotter than I usually would pour the third layer. Apologize. Because I was so worried about how set up the other two layers were. One of the things you'll notice is that the procedure or techniques for the 2-color swirl and the 3-color swirl are identical. Everything is the same because you really do use 3 layers of soap in the 2-color swirl. All you do is you make it a different color instead of doing color 1 and then color 2 and then color 1 again. So, which is typically what an acorn swirl is. You alternate the colors. So in this one, I just added a different color. The other thing I did, because I was so panicked at that first layer being set up, is I did not choose the correct order. And I won't say there's no such thing as a correct order for the colors, but the order I wanted that I had planned out. Yeah, these are way more chunks. This one is so set up. This is where I really start to panic and wonder if it's going to be a soap at all that is doable. Yeah, I'm laughing now, but I was pretty panicked. I intended to do blue and then the clear and then the green on top, but obviously I didn't. I like to have the contrast of a clear layer of some kind, not usually fully clear, but fairly translucent or clear with glitter or a little bit of colorant, something in there, just because it really stands out against any opaque soap that you've used. I also try to choose contrasting colors. I will give this one another try. I've done them before and done just fine, but just not on video. I spritz the edges like that when it's time to unmold it because it just makes it a lot easier. That's just it's something I really only do in my loaf molds because that's the only time I have trouble pushing them out sometimes. So as you see, the back is really chunky. It like I say, it turns out just fine. But I'm not too thrilled when I'm looking at the edges there. It's an okay soap. The colors are pretty. It smells great. A lot of people would just love to just have a nice bar soap with pretty colors in it and smells good. So there's really nothing wrong with it as a soap. Just not what I wanted. I was disappointed in it. And I'm beveling this edge here just because it's more difficult to cut. It's a little, janky at the top. So I bevel 2 of them on camera and then I don't bevel the rest because I really don't like this one beveled. I usually prefer the beveled ones on my loaf soaps like this. I've been kind of leaning more toward that, but I don't know. I wasn't caring for it. What fragrance did I use for this? Oh, this was sweet mint blossom or sparkling mint blossom, something like that. It's a Bath and Body Works dupe. I will put the title. I don't know if I have a link to it. If I can find the link to it, I will send it to you. Because I think I got this one from Aztec. I'm not sure. If I can find the link, I'll add it. If not, I'll at least put the name of it. I love this fragrance. It's become one of my fast favorites. It's just a very clean scent with kind of a hint of mint to it, a little bit sweet. To me, it's a very unisex type of fragrance. Pulling out here just to mention here a shout out to Uncle Andy's because it is the very best soap cutter for melt and pour soap. I've seen many of you struggling with a wire cutter and or a miter box or something like that. If you can get one, it took me a while to be able to save up to get one. They're not super cheap, but boy, they really do save a lot of frustration. It's the best way to get a really nice, clean, even cut, and you can alter the width of the cut. And I had mine messed up last time because I bumped it, and I got it fixed this time. So 6 even. Sorry, I have to let you read through this because this was fun. I just had to throw him under the bus because he really thought that wave was funny, and he did distract me from setting a timer. I said as we stopped the footage of that first layer, I'm going to go set a timer because I knew I had forgotten my phone and I intended to do it on film, and I didn't do it because I didn't bring my phone in. And as I'm walking out of the room, he calls me in to show me something, and it went completely out of my head. I was so mad at myself. Anyway, it's an okay soap. Doesn't really show up the sparkle on here, but I do have some close-ups that will show it off a little bit better, I believe. Sometimes I think with the swirls that actually are swirls and not just moving chunks around, I think the backs, the ends look a little bit better. These just kind of look like really messed up stripes. But when you actually get to where you're doing an acorn swirl and the timing is correct, I feel like it does a better job of both sides being pretty decent. The ends are always a little bit less exciting than the middle to me because they want to set up against the edges, and if you can scrape a little bit along the edge, you might avoid that, which I usually try to do, but this just wasn't moving. The sparkles, by the way, that I'm using in this is Mad Mica, and it's Sparkle Sunshine. It is my favorite. It looks like glitter. It's really not. It's considered a mica. And I forget the word that it's that certain flora, blah, 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 which is a synthetic mica, which is a good thing. I know that the word synthetic scares a lot of people, but it isn't always a bad thing. It is far better for it's cruelty free. It doesn't involve children mining mica. Also, it is sterile because it's not coming out of the ground, where other micas may not be cleaned properly, may contain heavy metals, etc., because it is coming out of the soil. And this is very clean product, and considered safe. So both for skin and for our sewer systems, etc. So that's my mica or glitter type of choice, are those types of sparkling micas. And as you see in this, I believe you can see it in this one, it really just looks like glitter, even though it's not. It's much softer than glitter too, so if you have people who are a little sensitive to regular glitter in a soap because it's a little too exfoliating or scratchy, this is not at all. At least not in my opinion, and I have pretty sensitive skin. So for those who don't know, again, I spray here just so you can kind of get a better image of the soap on camera. But I do spray my soaps after I unmold them because I live in Florida. It's very humid. I'll usually spray them with rubbing alcohol. I use 91% to 99% for this purpose. It depends on what I'm doing, which one I use. But it will help prevent glycerin dew, and it will dry up any that has already begun to form. It can certainly help do that. I also place them in front of a fan to do that and help with that. I hope you learned something from this mess, and or at least enjoyed it and enjoyed my little, I won't call it a fail because like I say, they really are kind of pretty, particularly, wow, in these pictures. Up close, it kind of shows it a little better than the camera angle wasn't really picking it up great. So someday I'll get better at all of that. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you learned something and hope to see you on my redemption video because I do plan on redeeming myself with this. Thanks. Bye. Hey everyone. This is attempt number 2 at a 3-color acorn swirl. My 2-color acorn swirl was quite successful, which the only real difference between the 2-color swirl and the 3-color swirl is you're using 3 different colors. The 2-color swirl, you're still using 3 layers. I hope that makes some sense. But you're just keeping the top layer and the bottom layer are the same color. So you kind of mix those in the same batch. And the color in the center is different. But for some reason, the 3-color swirl is kind of eluding me right now. I don't know if it's the inconsistencies in the temperature in my house because it's ridiculously hot. I'm in Florida and don't have the best AC setup going, but it's slightly inconsistent. So I don't know if that has something to do with it or the fact that I haven't been real consistent about which soap I'm using. Right now, what I'm pouring Flirt from Mad Micas into is Crafter's Choice Premium, not crystal clear. Sorry, that's what I usually use. This is extra clear. I do use crystal clear in here as well for the center color because I did want it to be a little clearer. Didn't quite turn out clear, but clear-ish. The extra clear, I sometimes will buy that if it's on sale, and I won't use it in the soaps that I need to be the clearest, but still want to have a good vibrant color so that the mica shows through really well. It's quite clear. There's not a huge amount of difference, but there is in the more intricate soaps I make. If you really want superb clarity, that's what you want to go with. Now, I am not affiliated with Wholesale Supplies Plus, which is where I purchase the Crafter's Choice Premium Crystal Clear soap and Extra Clear. I prefer all of their soap bases for the most part. But I'm not affiliated with them. They're not paying me to say this. That's just what I prefer. There are so many things that go into choosing your soap base. And you see here, I already have started melting the crystal clear and I'm covering with some saran wrap. That's a really good technique to do in this soap is to cover the soap, or in any soap where temperature matters and you want it to stay warmer longer rather than cool off too quickly. Cover it, it will stay. It won't hold the exact temperature, but it will stay a lot longer if you cover it. I also sometimes will pop it back in the microwave and not turn it on, just close it and use it as an area to keep the warmth in. So I hope you saw, because I'm rambling too much. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I know I did set the timer on this 10 minutes the first time, and then if it's not set up to where it's a little bouncy when you poke it, pencil eraser or the back side of one of these silicone spatulas will do nicely. Something that's got a little bit of give to it, but is solid and firm. And if it doesn't bounce back a little bit like a trampoline, it probably needs more time, which is why you saw me add an extra 5 minutes. And that's the basic instructions for the Acorn Swirl is between the first and second layer. That's the timing. You could also just add a couple minutes and see, because maybe, I don't know, maybe your air conditioner like mine is not very consistent. Here, you saw me add the fragrance oil. Oh, let me go back to the mica because this one's important. This is Blue Moon from Mad Micas. Yes, I am affiliated with Mad Micas, and if you make a purchase through the affiliate link in my description, you will be helping me out. I will get a small percentage without it costing you anything. The price for you will be the same. Hopefully someday I'll be able to offer savings with some things. I'm not sure how that works. We have here the Blue Moon Mica, which is white, and then blue iridescent at the same time. When you put it in the soap or put it up against a darker background, it will be shimmering blue. Then I enhanced it a little with a little Mystic Blue from Nurture Soap. No affiliate with them. But as you see, it also, Blue Moon also gives a little bit of just a twinge of yellowish in there. And just know that if you add too much, the question mark there and the little face. Why was I about to put the backside of my tool in my liquid hot soap? I have no idea. I was supposed to actually be testing to make sure that layer, the first layer there, was a little bit bouncy like a trampoline, and it was, and it should have worked just fine to swirl. But I believe what happened in here, I'm really not sure, but I believe that I waited a little too long because my second color was too hot, believe it or not. It was bouncy, but I think it was thicker than it gave me the impression. I definitely am going to make sure that the temperatures are a little closer before I start. I think I started nuking that a little too late in the game. I usually kind of do it all together, but I didn't this time, and I think I paid for it. But the result came out great. I'm not going to say the soap turned out bad. I really like it, even better than the last one. This, by the way, what you're seeing here now, I love that and could watch that all day long. The clear soap with a little bit of iridescent or inference mica. That's what they call those white ones that have a glimmer another color. And the inference sparkling mica from Nurture Soap. I love that. I love the way that looks. It's beautiful when it pours. It's beautiful in the soap. It gives a great effect. It works the best against a dark background, kind of like the resin soaps that you may have seen me making. If you haven't seen me making those, you can check them out. But it's really important in those to have a dark background to show off the inference and iridescent qualities of the mica. That it didn't really show my struggle so much. It was hard. It was hard to get it through. The second one gets even worse. But it did look more like a swirl than the last one that I was calling, moving chunks. But it was not really an ideal acorn swirl. It doesn't look like my first one, the Bermuda Triangle. What you're seeing now, the coloring I'm mixing up there, is Harold's Purple Crayon from Mad Micas as well. The affiliate link to this one is also in my description. I didn't get a chance while you see me messing with this, and you're about to see me make, I won't say a mistake, a bad choice. While that's happening, I just wanted to touch on the fragrance oil. I used, there's the mistake. I should not have done that. I was wanting it to be a little bit opaque, and I should have just left it alone. The colorant, I don't know. It does turn out pretty in combo with the colors there, but I think it would have been really stunning with that darker purple, and I shouldn't have messed with it, but I did. The fragrance oil. I'm using a combination of Merlot from Wholesale Supplies Plus. And yeah, see, when I was poking that one, I was like, yeah, that's too solid. It's not going to go through very well. But it wasn't completely solidified, as you'll see in the pictures. It just, I don't know. It seized up a little quicker than I expected, and then the timer indicated It may be because, again, this layer is also the extra clear. I never really noticed a huge difference in temperature, but there is a little bit of difference in the open time and difference in the melting point to me. And I didn't think about that before I started this. And you'll see now I'm basically just trying to scrape up stuff from the bottom and move around. Look how chunky that is. And honestly, if it gets to that point where it's feeling that chunky for you, go ahead and not stir it around, but keep digging it up, because you want more differences in the colors, and you're not going to be like stirring the colors in together because they're just not liquid at this point. They're soft, but they're not liquid. And of course, spritz. I spray a little glitter on top while it's on the break, and I didn't really care for it that much. I kind of scraped part of it off later. I don't show it on camera, but what I do is slice off those little weird bumps sticking up that sometimes might make a nice look. It might make it look rustic. It might, just enhance the handmade look, but I didn't care for it on these, so I kind of just sliced those off. So there was some glitter on and some places without, and I think it looked better in the long run like that. So I'm pushing that one out, and I give it my old fingers crossed thing, and I wasn't thrilled at first. It really grew on me, though, a lot better than the last one, and especially looking at the size, I'm like, this is just stripes. But it wasn't stripes. It looks more like a Rorschach tests. It came out really cool. It doesn't look like a swirl, and I've had some people asking me to maybe rename the technique and have, Ms. Terry's chunky swirl or something, funky chunky swirl. I don't know, because it is its own look. It's definitely a different look than the Acorn Swirl, but I have to get more consistent with what looks you can get and the timing and temperature, etc., before I feel like I can call it my own technique, because I don't feel like I'm really giving you like I'm able to give you the exact directions for how I created this, other than I let it sit a little too long, which is actually how the Acorn Swirl was born. If you haven't seen my two-color Acorn Swirl, look it up, because I talk a little bit more about where it came from, why it's called the Acorn Swirl, and how it was born, and credit to the original creator of that technique from Oak Leaf and Acetillo, I think. I don't know. I mess that name up so badly all the time, because if I'm looking at it, I can get it right. But if I'm not looking at it, forget about it. And, I just don't feel like I can adequately tell you this is exactly what you do to get that look. I mean, the Acorn Swirls are always going to be a little different, too, because it's soap. And when you swirl soap, you're not going to get exact looks of anything. You're not going to replicate exact replicas of the soaps, because it's a swirl and you can't control it that well. But I feel like this is a little too haphazard to be able to tell you until I don't know, figure out the formula. So good old Uncle Andy's there. I would not use another cutter for me for melt and pour. There just isn't another one. Many other people do plenty of other things, and there's, this is just the way I do it, and I prefer. But look, it came out cool. It's not a swirl. It's just a cool soap. To me, one of the saving graces to the soap is that beautiful Blue Moon mica and the Mystic Blue glitter. They really bring the clear spots, like even more so than in what you're seeing there. But it really makes, to me, it almost makes some of them, not all of them. That one to me looks like a mountainscape, like a mountain landscape with like lightning or something going on. I don't know, and a little sun there. That was just luck, because I couldn't have planned that if I wanted to. Not with a swirl anyway. Oh, and yeah, the back was just totally solid stripes, but whatever. The back isn't always going to look perfect. That one, these, the clear is it's a little swirled in, but it reminds me of a gemstone. It reminds me of gemstone patterns in the way some rocks and minerals are formed under high heat situations. Just that kind of mottled swirl looking. I don't know. I don't even know what to call it. I don't have good descriptors for this. But it does. It just reminds me of a rock. Now, the colors aren't exactly what I would picture most gemstones are. There's some brilliant colors out there. If I were going for a gemstone, I might have chosen different colors. And I do a lot of gemstone soaps. Those are some of my favorite to do. And I have one coming up fairly soon that I did for a special order. I'll be doing part of, I'll be doing a video of it. Doesn't capture the whole thing. We lost some of the footage, but it'll at least give you an idea of some things you can do with gemstone soaps. I beveled a couple on the video, and then I did go back and bevel them all. I thought after looking at them and kind of grieving the fact that they weren't a swirl, I decided that the beveled looked a little bit better on this particular set. So I did go back and bevel them all off camera, which you'll see in the close-up pictures that are coming up really soon. I hope you're also watching and not just listening, and listening, not just watching, because I do in my videos, I do give a lot of verbal descriptions and directions. Someday I'm going to get better at putting more text instructionally up there for you. I tend to only do that when I'm creating shorts, because it is a lot more work for me anyway. Somebody who's, done this for years, the YouTube thing, may find it a lot easier. It's not hard. It's just time consuming. And then you have to figure out, are the words covering my soap? Are they going to be seen? Is it the right color font? Nope, it blends in here because now it's pink over pink or whatever. There's a lot that goes to it. And, but someday I hope to get better at doing that and put up like what the name of the fragrance, how many ounces of soap I'm using. Basically for these, what you're doing is for measurements, you take your mold. How much soap does your mold hold? Divide it by 3. And you have 3 equal colors. And if you want to make it slightly less equal, like make the middle a little bit more, just take a few ounces from the top and bottom color before you add the colorant, and add them to your center color soap. It's not rocket science. It's also not, it's art to me. It's art, and it doesn't have to, you want to fill your mold. So know how much your mold holds and weigh that much out. I always add a little bit of extra because I underestimate sometimes. And, keep in mind when you're measuring with water, like I taught you to do in the beginner series. Oh, see, I like those. Those are pretty. When you're measuring with water, soap is heavier. So, that's another reason to add a little bit more soap than what the ounces are when you're weighing with water. And again, it's better to have extra than to panic at the last minute and try to melt some soap and add it in there when the rest is already setting up. I hope that this at least inspired you. I doubt that instructionally it's going to help you very much, but maybe you can learn from my mistakes. Or if you want to, repeat this look, just let it sit a little bit too much longer. Let the second layer get too hot, so you have to wait for it to cool down. And like I said, I'm not even positive that that's what did that to this, but, it's kind of neat. Thanks for stopping by. And please, if you have questions, put them in the comments. Let me know what you think of this look and if it's something you'd like to try to replicate, and I'll try to come up with better instructions for it. Thank you so much. Bye. Hey everyone. Today we're starting off with part 1 of my Barbie swirl. The reason there's a part 1 is because there will be a part 2. And that is because I didn't care for, I didn't hate it, but I wasn't really thrilled with my first one. And I'll explain a little bit more about why as we go along. I basically just didn't anticipate some of the colors and the way they'd come out. And in my head, I had it as, I'm not going to read all the things I'm already putting up on screen because that's just silly. So it gives me, one of the reasons I put them on screen is so I can also just talk to you and tell you a little bit about the process and why I ended up doing a second one. So these are things you might want to consider when you're doing yours. I am always a little heavy-handed with the mica. I never go to a point where it's not going to be a soap. I don't go crazy with it, but sometimes I add more than I anticipate. I do not measure because I go by the look for the most part. Till I get to know a soap, then I know how much I need. And I normally don't mix bases that much. I have been lately. This one I was intentionally mixing a little bit of a white base in for a little bit of opacity and to keep it on the lighter side. And I either didn't add enough of that or I could have added a little bit of titanium dioxide. But it ended up, the overall picture when I was done ended up darker than I wanted. And it didn't really end up the kind of swirl I wanted, although it was, I do think it turned out cool. Let me say that. And I know you hear me say that a lot. Turned out neat, but it wasn't what I wanted. And I hear a lot of you say that too. So that's one of the reasons I talk you through when something goes wrong, and not horribly wrong so that it's a bad soap. But when it turns out like I didn't expect or like I wanted, then I like to show you what I sometimes will do to fix that and rectify that. Right here is one of the problems of the soap, in my opinion. I really wanted to go with a Barbie pink, bubblegum pink kind of a feeling, and I feel like the Pretty Kitty did that perfectly. But for some reason, and Flirt, this is that I'm stirring in now, Flirt mica is usually a pretty brilliant pink. It's not neon, and it was darker in comparison to the neon than I thought it would be. I thought it would be a nice little shimmery addition. I was also going for a little bit of shimmery here. That's why you see me adding some sparkling micas to the clear. I don't end up adding any color to that because I wanted a little bit of glitter in there, little glitz. And of course, it's the sparkling micas are all safe for soap and better for the environment than they're not plastic glitter. So anyway, it's I suspect it's the Flirt mica and my use of it, not just the Flirt mica. And it brought, and even here when I think I put a little much of the neon Pretty Kitty, not Pretty in Pink, Pretty Kitty, in the base color. My main color that I used more than anything, could have used a little bit more titanium dioxide in there. And then what I would have done is lighten up the one you see me stirring now, the secondary color, which I don't know if you can tell, there's kind of a tier of the colors, the main color, and then I've got one secondary color and then two accent colors, and use a little bit less of each one. And if the whole thing could have been lightened, I would have been more pleased with it, which you'll see in my part 2. I do that. And I don't totally remake the soap as far as using, it's kind of a cross between a remake and a rebatch, because I use part of these soaps to then create the next design. And I was happier with how the swirl came out. This one, the pour you see me doing here in the corners, and I haven't done this soap in a while, this swirl, and it's I don't know, I need to practice it more. I used to do it quite a bit, and then I just kind of stopped doing it for a bit, and I need to get back at it and practice it. It's not like what you see me doing here. This is not the way I started it off. It wasn't working the way I normally do it. And so I was like, no, this is going wrong. And so here you see me more starting to pour around the edges, which I've mentioned in some of the other swirls I do, in both the freestyle or similar to the drop swirl. The outsides are going to set up first. So you always want to avoid those setting up fully. And same with the Acorn Swirl. If you notice, the originator of the design even mentions in her tutorials that you want to pour along the edges first, mostly to avoid pouring through too soon with the other colors and having them just blend. But it's also helpful to not have the edges set up too fast and end up with just a bunch of lines and layers. There's nothing wrong with layers, but if you're looking for a swirl, you're not going to get it if it sets up too quickly. But this pour here ends up more looking like, what do you call it? A camouflage look. And when my daughter was little-ish, not tiny, but, when she was in elementary school, middle school, the pink camouflage was a big thing. And so I thought that kind of went well with the Barbie theme. So I did keep some of these, and I took pictures and everything, and I came around to them. I just wasn't thrilled with the color. I won't say choices, because I was thrilled with the color choices. I just wasn't thrilled with my use of them. So what happens as you're watching me pour these colors, this color, the Flirt, what happens with it, I think, other than it being a little darker than it should, I also think that it, in comparison to the neon, it's a bit red. And I think it also, because it is in a clear base, which is what you want when you're looking for really vibrant colors, the neons do need a little bit of titanium dioxide most of the time to really give it the vibrance you need. But other than that, if you're using a straight up mica, not a pigment, not a neon pigment, you usually keep it in a clear base for the most vibrancy of the color. And this one, I think, because it was in a clear base, some of that pretty kitty came through a little bit and affected the overall tone of the red. Of the Flirt, and made it look more like red. When you see it in the finished product, it looks red. And it, to me, the reason I was so disappointed is it looked like a Valentine soap. Well, there's nothing wrong with a swirl that looks like a Valentine soap, but when your intention is a Barbie swirl, it's just not right. I didn't want it to look red, and it did, and I was disappointed. So, because the swirl turned out a pretty cool looking camo, I just left it as is, and then I took some of those bars and rebatched them by cutting them up. I cut them up and remelted them, and you'll see in part 2. I even include some of the bars that I got with the rebatch, so you can see what they look like, and that way if you decide that's what you want to try, you can watch that tutorial as well. But I do go back to more of a freestyle pour in that one. This one, like I say, started off trying. Oh yeah, my camera died again. I've got to get better at that. Just sprinkling on a little bit of glitter. This is Mermaid Trails from Mad Micas. I did put it in here. I wasn't sure I put the glitter. I've got to figure out how to get the swirl I was going for. Maybe pretty soon I'll put up some pictures of that so you can see what it is and what I kind of was emulating. And I don't use suspension-based soap that much. I don't care for it the way it feels on my skin, so I don't use it. And I've played with it. I wasn't real thrilled with the swirls I got. And I'm sure that part was on me, not on the base itself. I know a lot of people have success with the base. Dean Wilson has a gazillion beautiful videos on swirling with suspension base. Mine just weren't that great. And then on top of that, I would have worked a little harder to get the feel of it if I liked the way it felt on my skin, but I don't. And I know everybody's skin is different, and the way it reacts to different soaps is different. But I couldn't see like doing a huge. I know I do some soaps that I'm not great. That aren't great on my skin because everybody's is different. So I use hemp soap. I just use a variety for my customers. So yeah, you see, it's really not a bad soap, and it's a nice swirl. And some of them look like camo, that little thinner layers in here and there. But it did, when I first pulled it out, I was like, it looks like Valentine. Even the top started looking lacy to me, and just wasn't convinced I was done with it. So I was like, I have to remake it. And I guess the colors are pretty much showing up true. And the overall picture, I think if I had done the flirt differently and maybe done an in-between of the white and that neon pink, I would have been a little happier with it. But you playing with swirls, you really just have to play with the way you applying the different layers, because they're going to be different. Like I said, that one I'm trying to recapture, it's more like, I don't know if I started to tell you, it's more like one of the swirls that Dean Wilson does with the suspension base. But he uses a funnel, the funnel pour. It's a similar pour to that, but I don't use a funnel. And I have done him really well. And I think I know what I did wrong in that, in this one here, trying to recreate it. So I'm going to give it another try, but not with this soap and not at this time. Maybe as I'm working on, because I am going to do a couple more Halloween type swirls, color swirls. And we will see. Although I'm really having fun with the freestyle free pour. Drop swirl-ish. It doesn't look like a drop swirl does in cold process, but it's a similar style of pouring. Except you don't want to pour from as high as they do, I believe. Anyway, I pour mine closer, so because you don't want it to mix too much, and that's the problem with melt and pour. It's very easy to get the colors to blend too much, and then it gets muddy, and it's not really a swirl. Let me see if I left anything out of this one. It's fairly short because this is it. This is what you're seeing. It was pretty quick pour, and hopefully you'll stick around to see part 2, because I really did end up liking those better. Once you do see them in the pictures at the end, please tell me which one you think you like better and would like to try. Hopefully, you'll watch the other one too, and that can maybe help you decide better, because these pictures go by pretty quickly. At the end, it's hard to get a real feel for what something looks like to me when you're doing that, and I'll point them out when they come up. But I'll post in the community tab the swirl I'm trying to emulate, and like I said, I think I know what I did wrong. Of course, I thought I knew what I did wrong last time too. So hopefully this will really fix it and be it. Just a side note for those of you, if you haven't tried the fragrance oil that I put the dupe of the Victoria's Secret Pink Fresh and Clean, it's so perfect for the Barbie soap. If you haven't tried that one, it is perfumey for those of you who don't care for perfumey fragrances, but it's also really, really nice. I like it, and I don't care for many perfumey soaps, and I really do like this fragrance. I did use it very sparingly, as I mentioned at the beginning. You see, that's pretty. Kind of looks like clouds, but it looks like a Valentine. Maybe because I didn't add any pink to that white in there. And the other two were a little bit too similar. I think the darker pinks were too similar to really do much of anything. Either that or I'm trying to remember if I did this as a 3-color or a 4-color. Nope, that is. The white is the light pink. So, again, they're just too different. They're too distant from each other. the light pink could have been a little darker, or the dark pink could have been a little lighter, and then not the flirt. I love that flirt. I use it in so many of my soaps. If you know me, you've seen me use it a bazillion times. I have other pinks that I like. I just really love that. It's more of a magenta, and that red just really shows up. It's even more in these pictures, and I feel like that's even truer to the color. I don't know. But that is it. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe if you'd like to see this one right here done. That is the lighter pink one. I'm calling it part 2. And there's the other part of it. I cut them a little differently because that's what I do. If I'm not happy with the first couple of cuts, I play with the cut to get the swirl to look a little different. And I was glad I did because that was kind of fun. So thanks for sticking around with me, and I hope to see you in Barbie Swirl Part 2. Bye. Hey everyone. Today I'm remaking my Barbie Swirl soap. This is Barbie Swirl number 2. If you read along, you'll see a little bit about what I'm doing here. So I'm not going to read it word for word. That's just silly. But I am going to suggest to you that if you have not seen my I'm a Barbie Swirl soap number 1, please take a little time to watch that one. I will put the link at the end of this one. It's not necessary that you watch them in order. It just shows you how I got to these bars here that I'm cutting up. I did keep some of them because I didn't hate them. I just didn't want them to be Valentine. I wanted a Barbie soap that was more like the classic Barbie. These remind me of the 90s girl camo look, and the more neon style Barbie stuff. But I wanted more the classic Barbie look for the soap. And so this is what I'm going to do. And while you'll see me putting, like I said, a little bit of info up there as we go, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about remelting soaps that you've made and what can help or hinder that process. Because everything else, like I said, it's either in the other video or written up on the screen here. I remelted this. When you see me chopping up these bars here, I did that right after I did, well, maybe not right after, pretty soon after I did the first Barbie Swirl. So I'm thinking I did the first one on a Saturday. I'm pretty certain it was literally the next day on a Sunday where I did this rebatch. I don't even know if it's technically a rebatch. I think cold process soap makers have a very specific use for that term, and it doesn't really quite equal that. But melt and pour soap is made to be able to remelt and use again. So with that in mind, there are some limitations to that. You can't just keep remelting it over and over eternally. That's not a wise thing to do. It will continue to lose moisture and lose water content, and it won't continue to melt anymore or won't set back up properly. You may find as you're repeatedly melting that it takes a higher temperature to melt it, and it might seize up on you or get really gummy. It's really not a good idea. It also may get really chunky as you're trying to melt it, and some parts of it just won't melt and others will. So the rule of thumb I go with is, you've melted it once to create the first soap, and I will remelt it once to make another soap. I usually don't want to remelt it after that. It doesn't mean you can't use it. There's several ways you can continue to reuse the soap. It's still usable. You just don't want to get it too hot and ruin the actual soap itself. So you can cut it up. You can chop it up in little bits. You can chop it up and make little crystals that go in another soap, or just chunky embeds that go in a terrazzo soap. That's one of the reasons that you see many melt and pour soap makers making terrazzo soaps, shredded soaps, confetti soaps. All this kind of reuse is there. It just may not have worked in the bar that they originally made with it, and they didn't really care for it, or it didn't sell, or something happened with it that they didn't like. Like I said, these weren't horrible bars. They just weren't what I wanted. But there are some other things to consider as you may consider, I'm going to say rebatching, but it may not technically be. So don't come after me, anybody. You can tell me if there is an official term for remelting the soap, but I'm just going to say rebatching for now so that we both know what I'm talking about. As I said, you don't want to heat it too many times. You also want to be a little more cautious about how hot you're getting it or how fast you attempt to heat it up. I would check it a little earlier maybe than your normal, microwave it for 30 seconds and then take it out and stir it. I might speed that, not speed it up, but I might shorten that time a little bit, depending. This one actually behaved quite well for me, and I think part of that is the types of soap I was using. There are ones that are have a lot of moisture content, a lot of glycerin content to them, which does help. I have well, you'll have to check in the Barbie one. I list them all, but it's basically the extra clear. They're all premium. Well, they're not all premium, but they are all Crafter's Choice soaps. And so there's a variety in there of extra clear and Tussa Silk and all. And I'd never used the Tussa Silk base, by the way. And I don't always mix as many as I have been doing lately. But sometimes you have to go with what your supply is and looking at what you have coming up. And that's kind of why I'm not cheating a little bit, but using different bases than I may normally use for soaps like these. It is easier to do in a swirl type situation, especially if you're using the same brand, not necessarily the same type. Like I said, you can mix them. When I cut this bar up, the original bar up, I'm cutting up several different types of base at once and melting them together. And you, as you see, you'll see at the end, you can definitely do that. But just use caution because they may not all work together. And particularly if you are mixing brands, that can get a little awkward because not all of the brands tend to have the same melting point, and the ingredients vary a little more widely, even though obviously the different soaps have different ingredients, and sometimes the melting point will vary a little bit, but it's not going to stray as far as if you're changing brands, at least in my experience with that. So another pointer is if you don't like a bar and you think you might want to rebatch like this, remelt, don't wait. Don't put it in a bag and wait for 6 months and then decide to pull it out. If you pull out an older soap that you have, that's the time to shred it or cut it up into little bits and make a terrazzo soap or confetti soap, something like that, because you're more than likely you're going to have lost a lot of moisture just with time, even if they're wrapped, even if they're stored in a airtight-ish container. I'm trying to also watch this a little bit and see if there's anything I missed telling you. Oh, and here's one right here that I did want to mention. Those little plastic or silicone, I think they're silicone sticks that I use come in really handy for scraping away from the sides. That I think you've seen me do a couple of times now. But you also see me poking through. With this particular pour, if you see that the soap isn't going anywhere when you pour it, just one little. You don't want to stir it up. You don't want to go crazy because you're just going to end it up with blended, all one color, kind of a boring look. But you can poke it down a little bit so that it goes through down to the lower layers. I'd like to experiment in the near future with not really a swirl, but sort of. I want to try a movement with that stick and see if I can alter the swirl a little bit without ruining it. And here's another handy tool, or another handy use for these sticks. You'll see in a minute when I find the right one I'm looking for. There we go. Is you can prevent your soap from overflowing when you pour too much, like I tend to do. I just wanted to make sure that the top looked like I wanted it. So I was pouring a little more than was needed to fill it, because I wanted the look on the top and I wanted to get it fluid enough to do this. It's really not well, it is a swirl, but it's not a very controlled swirl, because as it's setting up, you'll see that you start pulling the top skin around, and it alters the look. So you have to be careful. I don't know if you can notice when I was moving that, it was very carefully. And the minute I saw it pulling, I stopped. I didn't just boldly go through and force it, because you can end up with a real mess that way. And you can get a pretty decent swirl like that on top if you are careful and go at it a little cautiously. And speaking of cautious, this knife right here that I'm coming at this, I'm really more scoring than anything. I'm not digging down into the loaf, just making a score line so that I can get it out a little bit easier. And if you haven't seen already, this little tip with the alcohol, rubbing alcohol, which is used for so many things, as I think most of us soapers have realized by now, is also great to help you loosen a soap from the mold, particularly a loaf soap that's difficult. I'm going to give you another tip right here about removing your loaf soaps, and that is, it may seem obvious, so I'm not trying to be condescending, but make sure your loaf is really well set up. That makes it easier, because this move here I'm about to make, just pushing at the top, and it's basically out, but you have to push hard with the top, and if it's even a little soft, you're going to leave thumbprints on the bottom, or mush it a little bit. And you'd be surprised how sometimes you can pull it out and start cutting it and it's gel in the middle. So make sure you give yourself enough time for it to cool, but please don't put it in the refrigerator. I mean, it's not against the law. Obviously, you can put it in the refrigerator if you want, but if there's different types of soap and different things going on, you can cause any layers or swirls to kind of come apart. And the other thing is it will make your soap sweat after you bring it out. And that's just something else to deal with. We already deal with enough sweat that you don't want to do that. That's another thing that can happen if you heat the soap too many times. It can start sweating pretty badly on you. And I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's going to continue to sweat every time, because it's just like doesn't have enough moisture. So it's really begging for moisture from the air, because glycerin is a humectant, and it will just keep sweating on you over and over again. So as you see the cuts here as I'm showing you, I wasn't thrilled with those. I wasn't hating them. There's one of them I really love, and you'll see me, I think it's that bottom one right there. You'll see me beveling that one a little bit later, but I wanted to try to see what the other angle of a cut would get me, because there is always that option to cut down through the middle, cutting it instead of from top to bottom, from side to side. And I didn't do the best job of cutting. It's not terrible, but what you see me fighting here for is the knife was a little turned. The blade was turned a little, and it was making not quite a diagonal, but sort of. So one of these bars, well, the bars on the ends of the sides, they end up being, really thick on one side and really thin on the other. And I kind of remedied that when I priced them. I weighed them all, and so they ended up being very close in, like two of the bars were 5 ounces, 2 of them were 6 ounces, so I just went with that and gave them a little bit of a different name and a little bit of a different price, and told everyone how much each weighed. And that was a kind of a quick fix for that. That's the one I like. I like that bar. I don't know, it reminds me of like a waterfall in places, or something like the water kind of dripping down into a pool or lava or something. When you get a chance, when I show more the close-up pictures a little bit later, I'm hoping you'll be able to see some of the detail. That is what I was really happy about with these, even though they weren't my favorite. They accomplished what I wanted, which was getting that more classic Barbie color. And they don't quite look like camouflage. Some of them look a little bit like some kind of weird alien, but they're still cool. But what I wanted you to notice is the detail in the swirls. There's a lot of little fine detail in some of these. Yeah, I guess you can see it right there. And some really weird little faces that seem to pop out. Maybe that's just me. They definitely have an ink blot flavor to them. A couple of them match up like you've done the ink blot art or something. So, see what you can see and maybe have somebody analyze it for you. But there are some fun little shapes. I mean, I always find fun little things in the swirls anyway, but these seem to have particularly interesting shapes in them. Yeah, I think this is the one that's my favorite of the larger bars. There was something that happened in one color layer that I don't like there to be a layer that looks like it's a solid layer, but it does have detail, and if you see it, but the darker pink at the bottom, I would have loved for that to have been broken up, but it is still highly detailed and really pretty, and that side's cool too. That side's broken up. That bar of the darker pink at the bottom, that's broken up. I think that's why that one's my favorite, because that's what I like. And that's what I'd like to experiment with in the future that I was talking about earlier with a swirl sort of, with one of those sticks to see if I can break up any weird little layers that tend to form. I love these bars. The ones that I cut from side to side, I think they turned out really, really pretty. When you're looking at them by themselves and you're not looking at it as an ink blot, they're, to me, even more beautiful. So just that really fine detail. That one almost looked like it was a pen and ink drawing or something. Of course, the back, which was the bottom, the back, that plain pink, that was the bottom of the soap in the loaf, I believe. Yeah, because the top is the one that ends up with a really bright look to it. I'll bring that back up. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching me remake this. I'm happy with the remake. Happy with with the results. I really like both of them. I just didn't want, like I said, Valentine's Day soap. It's still really pretty. It doesn't scream Barbie to me. I hope you go back and watch the original I'm a Barbie Swirl soap video if you're interested in the colorants I used and all that good stuff, and to see me make that type of camo swirl. I will put the link to that at the end of this. If you have any questions, you know where to find me, hopefully, or you can comment on the video. You can comment if you are in any of the same soap groups I'm in. You're welcome to comment on the post that will have the video in some of the soap groups that allow those. There I showed you a little bit of the Rorschach test there. Yeah, that one's got some interesting faces. I was starting to say the larger bars with the odd swirls. I was saying that there were a couple of them. Maybe I already said it, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating, but they looked like aliens to me, these weird little aliens or an alien planet or something. It was interesting. But it's hard to predict what you're going to get with swirls. It just is. You learn the more you do. You can kind of control things a little bit better when you know what works best for a swirl. Acorn Swirl tends to give you a lot larger chunks of soap if you do it at a lower temperature. That's one that came from a top. So that's the top of the soap when I cut that one in half. Sorry, I interrupted myself again. And these to me look like little landscapes with mountains on them. Love those. But yeah, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to comment. Feel free to find me if you can always ask on Messenger too. I wanted to put the camo soap in there too as a comparison in a couple of these. And there you see it back to back. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks. Bye. Hey everyone. We're going to work on a Halloween swirl today. This one is a 4-color swirl, basically a freestyle. If you are a beginning soap maker or a beginning melt and pour soap maker, please check out my beginner series playlist for melt and pour on my YouTube channel and get to know some of the techniques there, and let that list help you make some decisions on the types of soap you're using, etc., and learn about the all important temperatures and all the good stuff you'll need before you try swirling. Also, check out my swirling playlist that gives you a variety of other swirl techniques to start with. None of those lists are complete yet because I am still adding to them. My channel's not real old yet, but I'm working on building it as fast as I can. For those of you who have seen my swirl videos before, this one is slightly different. This is not an acorn swirl. I don't even know what to call it. I think I said a minute ago I'm calling it a freestyle swirl. If anyone knows that if there is a technical name for this type of swirl, please let me know in the comments, because I just don't know. I don't think it might be comparable to some type of a technique in the cold process world, but it doesn't give the same results as those. So I'm not sure if it even correlates at all. Anyway, let's jump into it. I'm working on some Halloween colors. These are kind of contemporary Halloween colors that you see now. You used to, when I was growing up, you saw orange and you saw green and black, and that was about it. And then over recent years, well, even when my kids were little, they started adding hot pink and black, or purple and black, or purple and green. So we're doing purple, orange, and hot pink, sort of. It's actually 2 shades of purple. One that kind of, as compared to the darker purple, looks a little bit like hot pink. It's definitely a more pinkish purple. The colorants I'm using are coming up on the screen, so I'm not going to go into each one in detail. I'm more going to talk about the technique, because you choose whatever colors you like for your soap. I'm doing a few in a series for Halloween, and so this is just the first in that series. What I wanted to say about that pigment that I was stirring right there, the Mad Mica's Grape Ape. Any neon pigment needs to be stirred quite well, and really, as you're adding it in alcohol, and you really do need to disperse it in something, alcohol or glycerin, something like that, before you add it to your soap. Other micas, sometimes you can get away with just adding it directly to the soap, depending on the technique you're doing, on the type of soap you're doing, but definitely the neon pigments need to be kind of mushed up a little bit. I'll almost think like pestle and mortar needs to be ground a little bit. Now, I will say this, the Mad Micas, and I am affiliated with them, but I'm not saying this for this reason. They're not paying me to say anything about their products. One of the things that led me to stick with Mad Micas is their neons. Their neons are a finer quality. They're a finer particle, I guess. I'm not sure, but they break up quite a bit easier than some others that I've worked with in the past. But they still will clump. If you're not careful, you'll end up with spots in your soap, which again depends on the look you're going for. Sometimes that might work just fine for you. But I did, yeah, I'm just adding some glitter now. Mystic Gold, I think, was this one. I'm actually not positive on that. I'm going to have to look it up, because I was toying back and forth between 2 different colors of Soap Safe glitter, and I think that's the one I ended up with. I did add, if you'll notice, I did add a tiny bit of titanium dioxide to the neon. Just a little bit will give it a brightness that it's lacking, and increase the opacity a little bit. But not much is needed. Of course, you can add it until you like the look of it. It's not going to change or morph. That only happens, the colors themselves, unless it's got vanillin in the fragrance that's gonna change the soap color. The colorants themselves are not going to morph. The reason you saw me adding that orange to a kind of orange looking soap base there is I had it and I wanted to use it up, and I knew I was using orange, and the fragrance went well with that soap, because that soap is actually, it comes with a little bit of fragrance in it. The apple ice, ice apple honey wine, something like that. It's a premium soap from Crafter's Choice, and it actually does have wine in it. I was trying to use up that batch because it's gotten a little dark. Some of mine, I have some that have been just sitting there. I mostly use premium crystal clear, and sometimes some of the other soaps that I have on hand get ignored, and the color can darken on some of those if they just sit around. So that one was not going to hurt the color of the orange soap. So I used a little bit, and because the fragrance is a bit fruity, it went quite well with the fragrance I'm using, which is orange cranberry. Honestly, because it's it's got a lot of very sweet notes to it, it smells like candy to me. And it works very well for a candy type, just a generalized candy fragrance. And I thought Halloween and gathering lots of candy, that's what this made me think of. So it worked perfectly for this soap. One thing to note when you're doing this kind of swirl, I kind of just dove in quickly, is you want to have them all melted because you're alternating. It's almost impossible to keep them all at the same temperature. I do have, if you'll notice, I have 2 buckets that are far larger and more full than the others. That's just the way I like to do it. You could do 4 equal buckets of soap. Just divide the volume your mold holds into 4 equal parts if you want. This is all aesthetic. This is all, the art of it is what you choose to do with a technique. And I had not way more, but I had a lot more of the Harold's Purple Crayon, that darker bluish purple, and then a little bit less of the Grape Ape, and it just kind of went down from there. A little less orange, and then a little less of the clear. The clear and orange are more accent colors. The clear with the glitter especially, it's just going to help give a pop of glitter every so often. And the clear offers a chance for light to shine through every once in a while, and for it to kind of give a little barrier between colors every so often. So, because you don't just want it all to mix together. Of course, that is more due to the temperatures of your soap. All of these I started pouring at around, for the 2 larger colors, I started pouring around 1/16, something like that. The smaller ones, because I ended up having to nuke them again, especially that orange orange, because I thought it was melted through and it wasn't. I took it out of the microwave before it was done. Sometimes you do that to let it melt the last bit of soap so you don't overheat it. And I kind of forgot about it and then went back and it hadn't finished melting the rest. So at the last minute, I stuck in the microwave, so it was too hot to start with. That's why I started with all of the other colors. And I wanted to be particularly careful with the orange, because the orange is what could throw a wrench in the whole thing. It's also what can make it super beautiful, but orange and purple do not make a good color mix. It does work. I mean, they do. They are a good color combo together, but when you mix them, like you're actually blending colors, you're going to get brown. So the more pink of the purples in that, the Grape Ape, is going to mix better with the orange than the darker purple that's more blue. And you'll see there are a couple spots where in my soaps it starts to swirl just a little bit with that darker purple and gives a bronze effect, which I don't mind. It came out fine. And I was very careful with the temperatures. I don't know if you saw me but pour a little bit of alcohol in that orange soap, just a tiny bit, about a teaspoon maybe. It just helps it cool down faster. Sometimes I'll spritz it and stir to cool down, but if it really needs to cool a little faster, I might put in a teaspoon, and stir it in. It evaporates quite quickly when your soap is hot, and it will help cool it down pretty fast. And since you're balancing a bunch of different colors at once and trying to keep them melted but cool, it's a trick. It's a game sometimes. So that's a little tool to help you on occasion. I wouldn't put a lot in. I wouldn't put more than, say, a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half in a container, because I don't know. It's still going to evaporate, so I don't know that it would hurt anything, but I always err on the side of caution anyway. Like I said, this is kind of a freestyle swirl. I'm just pouring it in slowly. I'm not pouring in huge amounts because I don't want any color to over swirl with the other colors or take over one bar. You might notice that I keep going around the outside. I find when you're doing swirls and swirls in melt and pour that have to be done particularly at cooler temperatures, which is pretty much all of them, that it's as you're doing little bits and little layers, the outside is what's going to set up first. That's going to start solidifying. And if you don't address it right away, if you don't put another bit of soap on top of it that's still warm, you're going to get really weird looking sides. And you might even end up with layers not adhering properly. Yes, you can always spritz with alcohol in between. I do on occasion on these layers, more to pop the bubbles. But because I keep pouring on those sides, it's not going to come apart because neither side is fully set up. But I don't like to spritz too much because it also, one of the great attributes of spritzing with rubbing alcohol is it does make your soap move. And that can help you or hurt you depending on what you're doing. And in a swirl, sometimes that can go against what you're wanting. You pour it in, you get it where you want it, and then you spritz it, and it goes everywhere, and it just starts blending with the other colors if you're not careful. I sometimes see people spritzing a little overzealously with a not a fine mister. I like to use a fine mister because it spreads out more quickly. You use less, and it's less disturbing to whatever you are spritzing, whether that's liquid soap or whether that's an embed or whatever. It's just you have more control, or at least I do. I feel like I do. But that's why you see me pouring anyway along the sides, is I'm trying to avoid odd looking layers on the sides and areas where the layers may not stick because it's setting up. I'm not sure if I do it in this particular soap, but occasionally I'll take one of the little thin sticks that I have that I'm stirring with the in the orange, those little silicone or plastic based stir sticks that look like popsicle sticks, that right there. Sometimes I'll do that and scrape along the sides too to make sure it's not just getting weird stripes all over the sides. Although the sides don't matter as much as everything else, but sometimes it helps it to stay as a unit rather than these solid weird chunks that aren't together. This is, that's my last little dip in there. I filled it. Now for me, this mold, I fight with it a little bit with how much it holds. This one was 42 ounces. That's what it was, and it was perfect. I used just about every single drop. Oh no, I'm wrong. That's my next soap. This one I measured out way too much of some of them because this mold has given me a fit. Sometimes I don't have enough. Sometimes I have too much. And I always knew it was about 38, 40 ounces, 42. And this one, I think I went a little overboard. I was just like, let's put a couple extra chunks in just because I'd rather have too much. Always would rather have too much. Up in the kind of upper left corner, you'll see some little soap rocks. And you will see a kind of a separate video. I don't catch the pour because it wasn't a planned event. It was, I have leftover soap. Let me pour something. I'm not going to let that go to waste. So I pulled out a rectangle mold, that little white mold that you saw me move away, and I poured some more and then cut them into crystal-ish shapes. So here's your finished product. Knowing me, I probably forgot something in here. Really, you just want to make sure that your temperatures are low for your soap type. If you're using another brand, if you're using Stevenson's or some of the other brands that are out there, just know your melting point. Stevenson's has a higher melting point, so it's going to set up faster. If you try to pour at 115, you're going to be in trouble. Mine pour about perfectly at between 115, 118, something like that for swirls. And yeah, there was one point I cut out the parts where I'm, remelting or whatever, but I think I only had to remelt at the very end there. I didn't have to do it a lot. Maybe one of the buckets I ended up popping in the microwave for like 10 seconds. I like to, when it's the buckets with the smaller the amount, the less you need. I actually had one that I popped it in for 5 seconds, and that was perfect. Just enough to get the rest out of the bucket. But you can see the glitter shows up nicely in the clear. If you just put glitter in one of the colors, you will see that as well. But the clear, to me, adds another dimension to that. I like to use a clear and an opaque in opposition in my swirls. I did have a few people tell me I should be calling it a galaxy soap instead, which, I planned what I planned, so it is what it is. And I also make other galaxy soaps, so I wasn't that concerned about calling it one. I make a variety of different types of galaxy soaps, and it does look like it could fit right in with them, sort of. I do some with planets and stars and that kind of stuff too, but it does kind of look like a spacescape. That one especially. And anytime you do a layer that isn't stirred, kind of like the Acorn Swirl, you're going to get more horizontal layers like this horizontal look. So you can easily get a camo look out of this style of pour. And you'll see later, I have another video upcoming where I do one that ends up being like a camo. I wasn't thrilled with it, and I redid, sort of. I kept some and redid others, and got a little bit of a better swirl, more kind of like this one. But I don't know. There are some people who are more experts at swirls. I'm not one of them. I just love trying them. And I know that I can always get something good looking out of it. If it means I have to cut it differently, or I have to do a retry, I can get it to look like something I enjoy. So that's my goal in doing these. But I am learning more and more. Honestly, when you hear other soapers in the soap group say it takes practice, they're not kidding. It just takes practice. I have one soap that I've done for a long time, and it's a very specific type of swirl that I do, but for some reason I can't always get it to work perfectly. I can't always get it to work the way I want, even when the temperatures are the same, the soap is the same, the fragrance is the same. So, there's little factors that come in there. I was really pleased with the overall look of these, though. But I will keep practicing, and I will keep making more combinations because I have fun with that. That's one of the soap crystals I just wanted to show you. So maybe that'll entice you to watch the video on that one. It's going to be fairly short because it's mostly just the cutting of them. But the pour was pretty similar to what you saw here. I basically just poured it in a little bit quicker because they were cooling off. Thank you so much for watching any of my videos. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it definitely helps my channel. You see a little bit of streaks there. That is from the glitter moving as I cut. I'm going to go back and polish that off. But thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, please let me know. And I hope you like and subscribe, and I hope you've gotten something out of this. Some days I feel like I'm helping. Other days I feel like I'm not really. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for. I hope you have a great day, And pardon my stammering. That's just the way the day is. Thanks so much. Bye. Hey everyone. We're gonna play around with some glow-in-the-dark pigments today. I'm starting off with an experiment. Mad Micas recently dropped their new Sapphire Glow, and I thought that would give me a good opportunity to play around. I love greens and blues anyway, and those are the colors that tend to, that glow-in-the-dark pigments seem to come in, that the ones that work. I bought one once off of, I think it was Etsy, that was supposed to glow purple. It didn't really glow purple. I mean, it didn't glow much at all. It was really, really hard to see. Anyway, so I was anxious to try this out. But my biggest goal of the experiment was to see if I could add color to the pigment, or to the soap that the pigment's in, without blocking the light. Because if you read the instructions on the website, and I kind of knew this before from experimenting, if you add mica, it's going to block the light and you're not going to get a good glow. So, or at least if you add a regular amount of mica, let me put it that way, because we'll be experimenting with that one coming in another video down the road, maybe after the holidays. But so I wanted to try one of the more transparent colorants in with the glow mica and see if it would still glow, because the color of glow-in-the-dark pigments isn't that appealing to me. It's kind of neutral, but it's just like, I don't know. I wanted something with a little color, so we're playing around today. And I chose the Veni color to start with because I've been kind of working with those recently. And they really don't seem to block light as far as the transparency of a soap goes. So I wanted to see if that would carry over into not blocking the light from the light that needs to get to the pigments, the UV kind of light or sunlight, whatever you charge your pigments with. And so I'm playing around with what I wanted to do with this batch is see if I could also match the color that it glows, so that it's similar when it's glowing and when it's not. The colorants would be the same. So for the new one, the Sapphire Glow, I added just plain blue. I may have added a tinge of purple in there, because that blue on its own is a little toward the aqua side. I may have neutralized it a little bit with that. And then the second one, I just used, I think I just used their green, because their green kind of lies on the aqua side as well, on the bluish type of green as well. I might have added a little more blue to that, because the glow blue pigment is kind of an aqua blue. It's gorgeous. So I was trying to match that. And then for the green, I used the Venicolor green, and I don't know the names of the Venicolor, so please forgive me. I'm sure I'm not calling them the right names. I'm just going with your basic primary colors. And then I added quite a bit of yellow, because the glow green, if you have not seen it, it's quite a yellowish green. It's kind of the color most things glow in the dark. When you buy something glow in the dark, that's the color you expect. I will say you're going to hear me say this way too much and get tired of hearing it, but it's so hard to photograph and film these. It just is, because the camera just doesn't want to pick it up the way it actually is and the way you see it. The Sapphire Blue is more blue than you're seeing it. It just doesn't pick it up as well on camera. It's you barely see a difference between kind of the aqua or the glow blue and the Sapphire Blue. There, you see it a little bit better there. But it's real apparent when it's glowing in real life right there in your face. So, and here you see me playing around with trying to block out some of the light. I played a game the whole video with Not enough light, too much light. Trying to figure out the right balance to show you what I was actually seeing. They glow way so intense. They're really, really. Now I did use. I'll preface it with this. I used the maximum amount. You do want to, if you buy these and use them, you do want to read up on the instructions on Mad Micah's website. By the way, I am an affiliate. I'm not paid to do these, but if you follow my affiliate link that will be in the description and you purchase something, anything, doesn't have to be the glow in the dark or whatever I'm linking for you. If you follow my affiliate link, you will, if you purchase something through there, I will receive a small percentage and without any cost to you, without any extra cost to you. It would just be the regular price that you pay for it, or if it's on sale, it's not going to take away your sale price. I will get a small little nice, little, here you go. Little benefit. I don't know, my words are not there today. Oh, guys, this one's going to be a mess, probably. But I'm going to try my best. It's all I can do on days like this. So, yeah, here, as you saw in the experiment, I think you could see on those little hexagon shapes I did for my samples that it worked. I thought it worked pretty well. You could see they looked very similar when they were glowing. The ones that did not have pigment or didn't have colorant in it. They looked very similar to the ones that had colorant while they were glowing. I thought they looked very similar, which was my whole, not my whole goal, but it was my main goal. So now I'm taking it up to the bigger batch to make an actual soap. And I did end up throwing those chunks in the little demos. I probably should have saved them, but I never want to waste anything. So I tossed it in there. I'm kind of balancing out. Yeah, I did add a touch of blue in that green. I mean, in the aqua one, the center one, which is the one that has the glow blue pigment. And I guess I cut myself off there by telling you about my affiliate link. But if you go on the Mad Micah's website when you purchase these, or if you purchase these, or if you've purchased them in the past, you may not have read through. Go through and carefully read their instructions, their directions. They're great. And they are the ones that give you the advice to not put mica in. Or if you do, put very, very little because it will block the light from charging. But they also give you instructions on how much to charge and what, how many minutes, depending on what kind of light you're using. I thought that was really, really cool. And the parameters for how much to use. And they say between a half to a full teaspoon per pound. And I used a little bit, very little bit less than the maximum. Like it's basically, you could consider it the maximum. Because I really wanted to see if I could get the effect. And later I may do some with less just to see what the effect is. Because those crystals came out really well. And most of the soap is clear with the exception of the little scraps in it. And then I did throw a little bit of clear soap in there too. Premium crystal clear. I'm trying very hard to still hoard that while we don't have it. Real quick, I know I'm interrupting myself again, but I want to tell you, watch what I'm doing here. You see me scraping the bottom and stirring as I pour. You really have to do that with the glow pigments. They are heavy, heavy, heavy. They will sink to the bottom. And the hotter you pour, of course, the faster they will sink. So keep that in mind. A swirl is perfect for that because you want to pour at a low temperature anyway. I'm kind of pushing it here a little with the 122. But I'm going, if you see, I'm kind of going very gingerly with the ones that are a little warmer. The darker blue, the sapphire blue, I was pouring at, I think, 116. I think I showed you that. Anyway, smaller amounts work better if you are pouring above the normal swirling temperature rather than dumping in a bunch of hot soap that's just going to kind of mix in with everything. But I also did notice, and I don't think it's the glow pigments, but I feel like that the Zenicolor colorants or colorant gel, whatever. I don't know what they call that exactly. But I feel like that accelerates the thickening of the soap a little bit. Maybe not necessarily cooling, but it accelerates the thickness. I've noticed that in the past using it. Wasn't just this time. So I was kind of nervous to wait too long with some of these. They are all below melting point. But normally for a swirl, I'd be, working with all of them like around 116, something like that. And again, I'm using soap that's from Crafter's Choice, Wholesale Supplies Plus. I'm not affiliated with them. I just love the soap. But it is, and the reason I'm even bringing that up is because it is a lower melting point than many of the soaps out there. So you have to work according to the melting point of your own soap when you're doing any kind of swirl, whether it has glow pigment in it or not. But just be aware that you'll be better off if you can pour it cooler, on the cooler side for your soap. If you tried to take some of the other bases out there, if you tried to take them down to 116, I'm pretty sure it'd be solid mess and wouldn't pour. Though at least the ones I've tried. It's one of the reasons I like Crafter's Choice. Many of you like the higher melting point. It works better for the kind of designs you do. So no judgment here. Everybody, each to his own. Everybody has different needs as far as their designs go and as far as their skin goes, because we all know that that's a very subjective thing. What you might like or what might feel good on your skin isn't going to feel the same for me. So I just kind of tell you what I use and what I do. So that's my thing. I'm just alternating. And I really didn't have a plan as far as what type of swirl. I kind of call this freestyle. I'm sure there's a better name for it, because I'm not specifically going in any one spot. I do tend to try to go along the edges at times, just to make sure it's not solidifying and not going to stick to the rest of the soap, because it does. Any kind of loaf soap like this, it is going to solidify around the edges first. So you'll see sometimes in there, I'll take the hottest of the soaps and go around the edges, just to make sure those are working. I don't show it here because I'm sure you don't like to sit and wait for me to microwave soaps. I did heat these up a couple of times, very little. But you basically just see me remove a soap from the picture, a bucket of soap from the picture, and then it pops right back in. And I just edit it that way, like that. Oops, sorry, I dropped my mic. Just like I did there with the clear, I pulled it out of the picture and popped it back in. That's just because I edited the amount of time that I was microwaving it. I just cut it out. Now, I will say this. I'm only heating these for like 10 seconds, 5 seconds, very, very, very small increments, because I still want it thick and I don't want it too hot. I just want it to be melted enough to pour. And at some point in here coming along, you'll see me pulling out stuff that really isn't melted and shoving in a few scraps. And that, in this kind of swirl, that works just fine. Really, this isn't about a swirl tutorial as much as it is the glow pigments. So, keeping in mind that I did pour a little bit of clear in here, everything else should glow in the dark. And when you see the pictures at the end that were so weirdly difficult to capture, and I don't just mean the glowing portion of it, the one just like in regular daylight without glow were really difficult to capture. It was almost easier to get the ones glowing than it was just to get what they look like in person, and not glowing on film. I don't get it. I'm terrible with I'm not terrible, but I'm not great with a camera, and I'm definitely technically challenged. So I'm not sure how to fix that. I don't have any really great pics of them not glowing that really depict what they actually look like. So keep that in mind when you see the pictures. But as you see, I'm really scraping down here to the bottom. I did get to a point, I think on all of these now, where I actually reheated the very end little bit too. Like I pulled off any gunk that was not, and when I say gunk, I mean soap that was gathered up on the spatulas, and put that in and melted a little off the sides, literally 5 seconds. And then I did end up reheating, or not reheating, but adding a little extra clear in there and heating that for the top, because I just didn't want the top to look like a big mess of glumpy stuff, which is, it kind of did, but it fixed it a little bit. It helped kind of smooth out that top surface. I wish I'd done it a little bit more. You do see me digging in there a little bit. I twisted and did everything they tell you not to do when you're swirling. Oh, that's not totally true. There are some very specific instructions on swirling with it, but I kind of wanted to make sure that the layers were not just a bunch of straight lines, so I made sure to dig down in there. And you see me playing with a UV light. This is a UV light that is my son's, so I cannot tell you where he got it. I can ask him, but it's, I mean, you just need a UV light. The other thing you can do if you really want to see it glow and charge it up is the sun. Sunlight is the second best. You can do it with other types of lighting. It just takes longer. The website, Mad Micah's website, recommends charging for, if you're using a UV light, they recommend charging it for 3 to 4 minutes. And if you're using sunlight, they recommend, I think it was 7 to 8 minutes. And for things like this, I mean, unless you have a lot of sun outside and you're taking outside on a sunny day, finding a sunny window and putting it in the windowsill is a great way to get to that. Obviously, you're not going to charge an entire soap like that without taking it out of the mold first. I just wanted to run the UV light over the top and get kind of an idea of if you could see any of the colors, if they were swirling, if you could pull, you know, visually pull out, oh, that one's the sapphire blue and there's the aqua. And I have to say, it really does in person. It's so much harder to see here with the camera. It didn't pick it all up. I'll stop complaining about that now. But in some of the pictures, you can see it. I really had to play with it. I think I turned the lights off completely in a second here, and you can kind of see. You can see it a little bit. You can see the green stands out quite a bit. The sapphire blue is the one that's the hardest to photograph. It does glow. And it's a darker color, so it's not quite the same brilliance. Sorry, I was about to choke there. But you do see it really well, and it glows very well in person. It's a darker. There you kind of see the darker. As the light begins to fade on it, and I'm very poorly charging these. I'm just running it over for a second. If I actually charged it for 3 to 4 minutes, it would last longer. So you see it fading pretty quickly. I was kind of impatient with this. And I did, I think at one point here, I charged it for like a minute when I was trying to capture it. I just wanted you to get a look at what it looks like when it's glowing. I wasn't really testing the longevity of it. I could do that in another video. If you're interested, let me know, because I will be doing more with glow pigments. And so I could combine a couple of experiments at once. I do want to test using very tiny amounts of mica. If you haven't seen my stained glass video, my first one, not the Halloween one, but the one talking about colorants, is mentioned somewhere in the title. I'm specifically looking or showing you how you can use a very small amount of mica with you want a very intense color, nice bright colors, and you can use that to get a very transparent look. Almost as transparent as using the Venicolor or as using the stained glass liquid dyes from Wholesale Supplies Plus or any of the other liquid dyes that are supposed to be transparent. The liquid dyes will tend to bleed from one color to the next. It does tend to bleed. It may take it some time. I've had some that took a very long time to bleed and not bleed completely. And I've had some that have just mushed together and made a brown all the way through the soap. And it didn't look like there was any difference in color at all. So I don't know if that depends on the type of soap you're using or what, but there you get an idea. I love that you can see through. I'm very happy I added the clear in there to give a little bit of clarity to the soap. You know, if you've watched me, you know how much I love clarity. And if you haven't, I love clarity. I love things that are clear and see-through and sparkly and glowing and all the fun stuff. And which is why I love Melt and Pour soap. I'm just beveling these real quick. I just feel like this is one of those soaps that really calls for it. Yeah, and see, I really, this is not giving you the image of what it looks like. The colors are a little bit more distinct. It does have an overall kind of aqua feel to it, because all of those colors tend to, you know, ride around blues and greens. So, of course, you're going to get some shade of aqua or teal. But I feel like in person you can see the difference a little bit better than on the film, no matter what I did. And I did make adjustments and play around with all the color settings and stuff like that. And it really, I didn't come close to capturing it in person. But they still look cool. Believe me that they do look cooler in person. But they're very pretty. And in a moment, I will bring back out that UV light so you can see how well they glow. I will, like I said, later do some experiments with using less of the mica. It's not cheap mica. It's very dense mica. I mean, it's pigment. Sorry, not mica. I keep calling it mica. It's a pigment, not a mica. But it's very dense, and you really don't need to use as much as I used. I wanted to go for super intense and see how I, kind of push the boundaries. I like doing that. And then I may back off and try some other things. I have used it with less in the past, but I just don't have anything to show you as an example. So there you can kind of see those colors coming through. Where it looks kind of, well, the darkest parts are where it's clear and the light's just going right through. But the areas that look a little gray or gray blue, that is the sapphire blue. I promise you it looks blue in person. But the camera just didn't like that and decided to make it gray. So yeah, I was fighting with having a clear image and getting the colors right and all that, and nothing seemed to work together. So, but they are really cool and really pretty. And I think if like I said, you're seeing, this is double time. I always either do I shouldn't say always. I usually do either 1.5 times the speed or 2 times the speed. So I move slowly, I work slowly, and I know you don't want to sit there and watch me, bevel for 30 minutes. I'm exaggerating. But anyway, but that is still, I'm not holding that up there for very long. And it does last a good long time. It lasts longer than what it picks up because it's obviously the camera isn't picking up the glow as easily as other things. When I'm standing there in the dark, I mean, we totally turned off all the lights there. Wow, could you see it? You could see it for a lot longer than the camera could. And you'd watch it fade on the camera. And I'm like, I still see it glowing, but the camera didn't. So anyway, they were fun. They were really cool to make. And here's my little bonus. I wanted you to see, and I didn't, sadly, film myself removing the scraps from the bucket because some of you have said you've had problems with that. When I was cleaning the buckets and I pulled out, because I'm not throwing away that good glow-in-the-dark pigment, I pulled the little skins that kind of form on the inside of the buckets. I was pulling them out, and I was like, oh, I need to make a soap with these right now. So that's what gave me the inspiration. I'm using for this one, I don't think I wrote it up there, but I'm using more of the aloe vera base, which isn't why I added the drop of blue liquid, and it's going to go for my base. It's not going to have glow in the dark in that. It's just 1 drop of the stained glass liquid blue from Wholesale Supplies Plus in about, 10, 12 ounces. I don't remember what I used of combination of basic clear and the aloe and olive, not detergent free. What's the premium aloe and olive. And here's the scraps I pulled from the bucket, and some of them I try to pull it apart. So it ended up being, I didn't mean for it to, but it ended up being 2 that look very green and 2 that look very blue. In both of those, you can see some variances, and you'll see when they glow. But if I did it again, I think I'd rip up the pieces, the larger pieces, a little smaller and stir it a little bit more, stir it around before I put it in. But I was just wanting to see what it would do and having fun with it. So I did that. I probably poured it a little on the hot side. It didn't really melt all those, but I was nervous about it. It was a little goopy as I was mixing, and I thought, oh no, they're starting to melt. But I mean, there's still, you'll see when it definitely shows up in the dark when it's glowing. In real time, it shows up too, but it's harder to see. It's it's not cloudy, but it's I don't know, just not as stark of a difference. Now, because I'm using such small bits, you're not going to really see the different colors in the daylight, in just looking at them, because it's so thin. It's not enough color to show up, but it does show up in the glow. So when it's in the dark, you do see the differences in the colors. The whole piece, mostly, I'm making crystals out of these if I didn't say that already. The whole piece, as you'll see here, looks kind of like the bars did. It's got an overall aqua look to it, but it's more, because I used that clear base with the blue, it just stays that, that's what shows for the most part. Every once in a while, you'll see a little hint of green pop in there or whatever, but the Veni color is such slight amounts in there at this point. It's really tough to see that. So you're mostly just looking at aqua, which I don't mind at all because it's really pretty. I did put, I don't know if I mentioned, I did put a little bit of bio glitter or sparkling mica actually in the top of that one, because I sometimes can't stand to not put a little bit in. And I just wanted a little, since I was making a crystal or gemstone, I wanted a little something special in it. And I was really glad I did. I noticed when I was, after I cut those and I was looking at them and taking my pictures, etc., the glitter really did add a lot to the overall look of it. I did not add a lot because I didn't want to lose the clarity of the soap overall, but I added just enough to where it's got a little sparkle. And it kind of, because I just put it in dry and I just dipped my little stick down in there and swirled it just a little, it stayed that way. It's kind of little swirls of it. It's really pretty. Cutting these just free form. This is kind of my basic cut, but I went a little freer with it in places. Some of that is I was battling that mold can sometimes bow, as some of them will tend to do. I do have a little box I sometimes use. It's a combination of 2 boxes and a couple of books and things that I will do to keep it from bowing out on the sides, and I did not do that. So you see me shaving a couple of times here because one side bowed out a lot more than the others, it seemed. So that's why the cut is a little bit different than my normal, but this is basically what I do. Cut the corners off, give it as many facets as possible. And I don't know. I guess I did show you. I started off using the veggie peeler that I like to use for beveling on these. And every time I try to do that on the crystals, I'm sorry, and I put it down and go back to my little tiny knife. It just doesn't work as well on that. I don't know why. But I mean, it's the same amount of kind of soap it's removing. It's the same basic idea. It's just smaller lines. And I guess I just have more control with it over that. with the little bitty knife, and I promise I won't cut myself. So you just have to know your limits and what you can do before you start picking up and wielding any kind of a knife with soap. I mean, that's a general thing. I mentioned it in my last video because I was doing a lot of trimming with a knife. And there are other ways around it, so you don't have to do what I do. You can do what I do as I say, not as I do, unless you have experience with it. And here we slowly start turning off all the lights, and I'm kind of showing you as we go the different effects. Please ignore all the little pumpkins and ghosts and bats. I do many videos in the same day sometimes, and you'll find overlap. Oh, man. Yeah, it's so grainy. I'm sorry. But it's what we could capture. So it at least shows that it glows. It's so much better in person. I think some of the, especially the crystals, I think the photos capture it a little bit better than this, and you'll get a better idea of what they look like. And this is what they look like up close without the glow. I mean, they have the glow in there, obviously. It's just not charged. And it's in daylight. So this is what they look like when you purchase or make them yourself. And that's kind of the normal average look until you charge them and turn off the lights, which I think you can see a little bit of that glitter in there. There are a few bubbles made their way in there. And really almost any time you use those little kind of scraps that are pulled out of the bucket, you're going to usually have a little bit of that. I had a little more than usual this time because I didn't follow my normal pattern of doing things. I didn't spritz them with alcohol first before I put them in. So that added to the bubbles. But as I've said before, in crystals, I don't mind because you do get bubble looks and inclusions and a variety of different things in crystals. So they don't have to be perfect because crystals aren't. They have stuff in them. And that's why I feel like those scraps make such great crystals, because they're so random and thread-like sometimes. They really look like crystal inclusions. I think those came out really pretty. It's brighter in these. Like you can see through them a little better. But the light, it's, I don't know, it's just preventing you from seeing all the way through. Oh, yeah, here we go. See, I couldn't capture that. These are just the bars on their own without the glow light lit up, and it's so hard to capture. So these, I mean, you can see it's very bright there. I also took a picture as it started to fade because that shows the true colors, I feel like, or at least a little bit more of the true colors. And the swirls came out really neat, I think. I'm hoping, I'm just going to let you watch the rest of these and chat with you a minute to say that thank you. Thank you for coming. I really hope you learned something or found something interesting. If you have any questions, if you have any other kind of experiment type things you'd like to see, I will do my best. There's no guarantees, but I will always give it a try or at least a consideration. And if you would kindly consider leaving a like, subscribing if you're not already subscribed. I do a lot of experimenting, but I also do a lot of beginner videos and more advanced designs. And I thank you so much for stopping by. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye. Hey, everyone. Welcome to a really cool acorn swirl that isn't really an acorn swirl, but a beautiful soap. I have published this video before, and you may have seen it. It was published in a Q&A that I did quite a while back. Mr. Soaps and Such was my interviewer, and he asked me your questions that you submitted, which I thought was a lot of fun, and I would definitely like to do again. But in that video, I just played the video and put a little text, and we recorded our Q&A session over that. So in this, I'd like to give you a little bit more of the details of the making of this swirl. I didn't record it on its own way back when, so I am now. And I want to talk, even though you're seeing the numbers up there, I really more want to talk about some of the soaps itself, some of the soap bases I'm using, And right there, you see premium goat milk from Crafter's Choice, Wholesale Supplies Plus. And earlier, you may have seen, I'm hoping you saw, the aloe vera and olive oil soap base. I believe I used the detergent free, but if not, I've used both and love them both. Really, really nice soap bases. The aloe and olive is really a I don't know, soft feel to the lather, not drying at all on my skin. I know you can't say too much about soap other than it cleans, but it really, my skin really, really loves that base. Goat's milk, I do like that one. It's not my personal favorite, but it's really nice. And I really don't even have a reason why it's not my personal favorite. It does lather really well, especially the premium. But I've used the detergent free and gotten quite a good lather from that as well. The one I'll say I'm not as fond of is what is it called? The basic. I'm not a fan of that, of any of the basic ones I've tried. And I probably haven't tried all of them, but I've tried many. I know I've tried the clear and the goat milk basic and probably I don't know how many others there are that are basic. There's I know there's a white basic. That's one I don't think I've tried ever. But anyway, it just kind of isn't great on my skin. Don't let that sway you. Your skin is different than mine. Everybody's skin is going to react differently, and the way it feels to you is going to be different than me. I will say I'm also not quite a fan of the way it melts and you work with it. It's better than many I've used from other companies for sure, but it's not quite the fluidity of the premium bases I've used, and even really the detergent free. The detergent free actually usually stay fluid longer than anything. But if you're wanting to pour soap that you're trying to get it to a low temperature, and or you have a lot of layering to do, so you're needing it to stay fluid for a while, and because you don't want to heat it over and over and over and over. I highly recommend the premium bases and the detergent free. So again, it was perfect in this. But that's right. I used the premium, didn't I? I have used it in a swirl and it worked just fine for that. I will say that. So if you have some and you want to give this swirl a try, be my guest. You might want to watch your timing better than I did. Here's what I forget several times, and I've done this kind of a swirl many times. And for some reason, when I set that timer, there's a timer that you set if you're following the original instructions of the creator of the Acorn Swirl, which is not me. I will link that if I can, but it is linked in my original video with my Q&A, if that would help you find it. It's very specific instructions, which I find very helpful, but you also have to keep in mind that your soap base might be different. Temperatures, etc., might be a little bit different depending on, your melting point, depending also on your environment and the climate in your house or your workshop. I found a great deal of changes that I've had to make since moving to Iowa. It's just not quite the same as the environment and climate in Florida. But it hasn't prevented me from doing anything yet. It's just you have to make adjustments, and sometimes they're very subtle. My soap wasn't necessarily freezing up on me here in Iowa, but just something to be aware of, that when you're listening to instructions by someone else for you, you've got to take those things into consideration, that things might be a little different for you. So as I'm pouring this base, that's one of the things that I wanted to say I mess up on a lot. I pour the base and then I set a timer. And that's what I always do. I'm following the instructions of the originator of this. But what I forget sometimes is if I'm using different bases, especially, is if I don't heat up all the base at the same time, if I'm doing it like this, I've got to add the melting time in there somehow or subtract it really. If it's going to take me 5 minutes to melt the next set of soap, the next layer, these tend to be done most frequently in 3 layers, whether you're using 2 colors or 3 colors. Oh, yeah, I did worry after I had that phone hanging there that I dropped my phone right in there. I don't know why I didn't even think of that. Anyway, you see I skipped ahead time there, but what I forgot to do is have my next batch of soap melted. So if it takes you 5 minutes to melt about a third of your mold, which is how I sort those, you can make it offset a little bit if you want one color a little stronger than the others. Then give that one a couple of extra ounces. My mold holds about 42 ounces, and that's what I base my measurements on. Your mold may be different, but I weigh it out and go from there. I did 13, 13, and 16, I believe, in this one. But I should have started melting that probably more like 5 minutes in or 5 minutes after. I don't know because I didn't really keep track of how long it took me to melt the second batch. But you might want to subtract that time off of your timer or melt it all at once and then just have to maybe reheat it a tiny bit. If you melt soap ahead of time, you can prevent it from setting up fully by putting it in the microwave, not turning it on, just closing the door. That keeps it fairly airtight and helps hold the temperature. But if you want to go even further than that, put a little wrap of saran wrap over it and then store that in the microwave. And you will get a little condensation, but if that drips back down into the soap, it's fine because that's where it came from. So it's not going to hurt anything. It's not like adding a bunch of water to your soap base. It is just rehydrating what came out of it through the steam that can happen and will happen if you cover your hot soap. So that being said, you may have to kind of wiggle that around and figure out how many minutes to set your timer, or how much soap base can you melt at once. Do you want to use a melter? If you do, make sure the temperature comes down enough in time, because what are we doing in a swirl? If you don't know, if this is your first time swirling, doing an acorn swirl, or really just about any swirl with melt and pour, you've got to be temperature sensitive. You want to be on the low side of your base's melting point, and below it if possible. Mine, I like to take it down for swirling, as you want to go as low as you can. I think I take these typically down to like 115. My melting point of my bases is between 120 and 125. And typically to heat it, I'm going to take it to usually I take it to about 128 to 130. If I'm doing something where I have to keep it hot longer, or I need it to be hot when I pour it, which happens sometimes, but not typically in this type of swirl. This type of swirl, you want it on the lowest side. Anyway, you want to heat it enough so that it's not going to lose too much heat when you're adding fragrances and colorants, because that will lower your temperature. So all of that sometimes will take a little bit of time. You have to keep that into consideration. And I think that is where I failed on some of these. And this soap isn't a fail. I'll say that. Not at all. I just don't feel like it looks quite like an acorn swirl. I've said in a couple of my other videos that this has happened, that I should come up with my own name for this swirl, since the timing is off and it's kind of different. And I haven't really yet, but other than I keep calling it a chunky swirl because that's what it makes me think of when I look at it. This one actually, to me, came out looking a bit like, not the colors, but the shape of the kind of streaks through it, etc., that happen. It reminds me of a gemstone or a stone called Chinese writing stone is one of the names for it. I don't know the other names for it offhand, although I do believe there are other names for that. But it's a stone that's very pretty and has really unique marks throughout it, and that it reminded me of that. It also reminds me a little bit of um, a a spacescape, or some other planet, otherworldly place. But anyway, that being said, you're seeing me stir in the Zenny color. As I've said before in other videos, and I'm going to say it again, it is a wonderful colorant and it won't bleed. That is the most important use of it, is being very clear as or clearer than a liquid colorant. I don't know if you really can get clearer than the liquid, but it certainly is super clear, and you get a very bright color with it. If you add enough, it's kind of on the mild side, so you may have to add more to it, but it won't hurt your soap and it won't bleed. But it's really hard to find. So I apologize now. There probably won't be a link in here unless I can find one that actually has it. It's just hard to find right now. Um, and it's hard to find in the US typically. So you may, if you are not in the US, give it a search. I put the name up there for you, Zenicolor. You can search it anywhere, and you may find access to it somewhere. So if you do, great, I'd go for it. It is a little on the expensive side, but if you're just using it for the occasional soap that you really want to have a clear pop of color, I feel like it's worth it. I've only bought one set, and I'm still using it. I haven't run out of any of the colors yet. I haven't made tons of these, but I've made several soaps. You've probably seen me make several soaps in my videos, and I've made some that weren't videos using those colors. So it lasts a fairly long time if you're not only using that. I definitely use micas more frequently than the Zenny color, but I feel like it made the perfect second layer for this soap. I went back for a little bit more because I wanted it to be really bright pink. I also add, I don't know if you already saw me add it or if I'm going to do it now, but I add a tiny bit of glitter, mica glitter. It's not real glitter. Oh, yeah, I did add it. I see it in there swirling around. And that makes such a nice touch. I want you to be sure to stick around and look at the pictures in the, both at the end when I bring them up close and in the light box pictures I create in this one. Because and see if you can see the glitter in the clear. To me, that's one of the things that really helps that clarity to stand out, seeing the glitter, and it gives a real 3D kind of effect as it's swirling with the other colors. Anyway, this, like I said, this is kind of a fail-ish, but not, because it comes out gorgeous. You'll see if you haven't already. So I guess I'm trying to give you more pointers that I didn't post on the text, but I'm hoping some of what I'm saying is useful here. The temperature you want your bottom layer to be is you want to be able to poke it pretty, not stab it, but poke it heavily with either the end of your silicone stirrer or with the end of a pencil eraser, something like that, that's got kind of a rubbery feel to it. And you want to see just a little bit of bounce back with it. And that's kind of an indicator that it has a thick enough skin. You don't want to see ripples. If you blow on a soap and you can see anything happening, that's way too hot still. It's not cool enough for this effect. So you want it to be a thick enough skin. If I had to guess as far as a measurement goes for that thickness of the skin, I'd say 1/4 of an inch. But I can't be positive on that, because if I were to poke at it to measure and see the thickness of that skin, then I'd be kind of destroying the whole thing. But I'm kind of giving that as a guess as to what I see when I'm digging up the layers. And you'll see that's kind of the fun part. It's tricky, and it's a little, you got to use a little elbow grease, but it's not really hard. It's not really difficult to do. You're wanting to incorporate both bases together on the first, the second pour the second layer. So the first stir, you only get 2 stirs. You do one at the second layer pour and then one at the third layer pour. So yeah, I am pouring this a little hotter than I normally would. Normally I'd try to get it down to about 115 to maybe 118 or so. But I didn't with this because I was afraid that that white layer had sat there too long and maybe set up too much. So I figured the hot isn't going to do much of anything if it's already solidified. So I poured it a little hotter than normal. Oh, it's such a pretty pink. Anyway, you do want to spritz with alcohol with every layer you pour because you don't want bubbles in your swirl. I both spray before and after. So you can tell there's still liquid in it because it's coming through right now. And you see I'm really having to work to get that spoon through there. The spoon zigzag is kind of, I guess, part of the signature move of the Acorn Swirl. You start at one end and you start in the corner and you make a zigzag throughout your mold. But typically that's all you're supposed to do is zigzag and you're done. When it's a little more set up, like it has been in quite a few of my Acorn Swirls, I sometimes come in and dig a little bit more. And I believe that I do that more when I pour the third layer, but I think you'll see that that's why these weren't fails. These weren't total fails. Sometimes I guess you just have to have some kind of intuition or pay attention to what your eyes are telling you. You can't really see under it, but as you can tell, I knew that the white was still a little bit liquid because some of it came up. You can see the swirl right there. So I didn't come back and stir more because I didn't just want the whole thing to turn light pink and lose that beautiful clarity of the other soap. So I chanced it and poured it a little hotter, but I left it alone. And you'll see I don't do that with the third pour. I am melting again more of the aloe vera and olive base that I used in the first layer, which I could have melted it if I were smart. I could have melted that all at once and poured off. It does make it a little easier to measure if you want to be precise, like, okay, I want 13 ounces underneath in the first layer, and then I want 16 ounces, and then I want 13 again. Unless you have a large scale that you can keep your mold on and allow it to, just keep tearing it or zeroing it out so that you can measure and weigh how much you're doing, how much you're pouring, then an estimate is fine with something like this. By the way, I am tapping on there for a couple of reasons. Tapping is frequently shown with other soap makers and melt and pour and cold process as well, because tapping can help get bubbles out, bring bubbles to the surface. But this reason, the reason I was tapping this is it gives me an idea of how fluid it is still at this point, and how much. If you see it wiggle a little bit, it's not completely solid. You can kind of feel it with your hands, and the sides squish in a little. If they're solid, you're done. You're not in trouble, but you're probably not going to have an acorn swirl when you're done with it. So I kind of, especially after I lost my timing here, it was just not going to work with the timing that that I normally use because I wasn't prepared and I didn't have all my soap melted at once because I was using 2 different kinds. So you could always use all of the same kind and then add titanium dioxide. Instead of using goat's milk, I could have used the aloe vera and olive and added titanium dioxide, but I didn't. So I ended up heating individually, 3 buckets of soap. And I also did not use a soap melter for this process. I added the charcoal. You've seen me before, I believe, hopefully, add charcoal, activated charcoal dispersed in glycerin, and that will help in the cooling process. Anything you add to your soap, unless it's hot, unless it's already got some kind of heat to it, something that you heated to add, which I can't even imagine what that would be, but it's typically going to cool your soap off, which as you're doing a swirl, you tend to, especially this kind, you want to go for cooler temperatures, especially in a loaf mold. And this is the reason I know part of the reason I'm re-recording this and yammering over this video is I wanted to include it in a swirl compilation. And all of the swirls in this compilation are in loaf molds. Well, they are much more difficult, I believe. To me, it's much more difficult in a loaf mold than in a slab mold, which is a more flat mold. And it gives you a different look. If you're using a loaf mold, when you cut through, that's where you see the design. If you're using a slab mold, then the design is the top. Like what I'm looking at right now, if that were in a slab mold, that would be the top of my bar. That's what I would see. So typically that's kind of what makes the difference. One is up and down and one is horizontal. Vertical and horizontal. There we go. Those are the words. Some days I have words and some days I don't. So I believe I've gotten this down to a temperature that's pourable. I'm not even sure. Like I said, yeah, okay. There's another trick. There's another trick for you for cooling your soap down if it's heated a little too much. And that is alcohol, like I just sprayed, and also adding a little cube of soap. That can bring your temperature down as well, because as that soap is melting, that is helping to cool the rest of it. That's something I frequently use. Not that I overheat my soap very often, but you want to get it hot enough, like I said, to incorporate your fragrance oil and all of the additives you need. And sometimes it needs a little bit more cooling off before you pour. And in this one, of course, because it is a loaf swirl pour, it needs to be on the cooler side. I couldn't even see what that temperature was as I just was taking that with my thermometer. So you'll have to forgive me on that one, I'm guessing. But part of the fun of these is you don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, here goes nothing. That's kind of how I felt. I remember that, even though it was a long time ago. It was kind of crossing my fingers and saying prayers and jumping up and down on one foot. No, not really. But, hoping and hoping that this worked out. Because can you imagine the mess if the black and the white and the pink just all incorporated instead of swirled? If it blended instead of swirled. And that's why typically these can be more difficult. If your temperature is too high, they're going to just blend. And here I go with the back of the spoon. This part was much more difficult because, first of all, it's thicker. You're working through a thicker amount of soap, and more of it, of course, has set up. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but it isn't, I wasn't breaking my wrist there. I wasn't even sore, but it took some effort. It does take effort to swirl this. As you saw, I did kind of the zigzag move right from the top, but I had to pick up my spoon in between because it wasn't going to really curve around. And then I dug just a little bit because I really didn't want it to be all black and white and pink chunks. I wanted to have, if there was any hope to have a swirl, I wanted to. So let's see what it came out like. I'm hoping that if you've seen this before, I'm hoping you remember what it looked like. That note there about forgetting to spritz, that is a trick if you haven't seen me do this before, which I'm not doing it now, but if you haven't seen it in one of my other videos, I'll peel or pull away the edge of the mold a little bit, which you want to do anyway before you unmold. It helps. It come out a little bit easier, helps everything unmold. But when you do that, spritz a little bit of alcohol down there in the little crack. And if you can do that on every side, it's going to slide out a lot easier on you or onto your surface, not on you personally. um, you can't tell at all what it looks like. It's just kind of, looks like a hot mess, sort of. Um, but you can kind of see on the bottom there those scratch mark types. I don't even know if that's the right word there, but streaks it kind of created when I scraped up the bottom of the white that had started to set up. It typically will set up on the top and the sides and the bottom, and the inside is what's going to stay liquid. So when you're scratching through that bottom with that spoon, that might create some streaks. Well, it just so happened in this one, because I let it set up too much, those streaks came out really cool. I did have to dig all the way down, and you want to do that if you feel resistance at the bottom. Dig through it, dig it up. Yeah, I wasn't real fond of that one, but 5 out of 6 is not bad. And actually, the back of it looked kind of cool. I almost kept it for that, but I ended up shredding that one for another soap. And I don't know if I ever filmed that or not. I don't think I did. But here come these. Now you can see some chunks in there a little bit, especially on the back side. Usually those are going to match up when you cut. There's going to be something that's similar, at least on the other side of it. But they all came out really pretty. You'll get to see them close up in just a moment, because I do show each individual one, since they're only 6 bars. And you will also see me bevel them. But right now, I didn't know what to think. That first one really upset me when I cut that one. I was like, oh no, please don't let the whole loaf look like this. But it didn't. It was only one. The rest, there's one of them that isn't great on the back, but that's kind of typical. I don't know if you've done loaf mold soaps or swirls before, but typically the back is not going to have the best design, the back end of each. In fact, sometimes people will slice off just a little bit on the ends, because things will solidify quicker on the ends and give you kind of just not the best image of what your soap looks like. So that one, but usually the other side of that soap will look just fine, and so that's your front of your soap. Oh yeah, see, there's some of the streaking I was talking about. You can see it. I don't know, looks like reverse lightning. It looks like it looks cool. It looks like streaks of ink, as if it were. That's what made me think of the writing stone. Is it's got a real streaky look to it. I don't recall ever seeing or hearing about a pink writing stone, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I didn't stick with the gemstone kind of look for the naming and marketing of this one, because, several reasons. One, I had used the fragrance Volcano, and I felt like it reminded me of a volcano on some planet somewhere, or volcano-ish. It looked very eruptive in places and reminded me of that look of a volcano, but kind of fantasy like. So I just stayed with that. But, and the other thing is not as many people have probably heard of a Chinese writing stone. And so I usually try to go with stones people recognize, but sometimes I go a little off the wall because I love gemstones so much. But I will say all of that was just to say that one of the reasons I also wanted to add some text to this is I just want you to know that there's so many different ways. If you think you've messed something up in Melt and Pour, there are so many different ways to go about saving it, or just rebranding it, or rethinking your design a little bit. If I had chopped these a little different, if I had sliced them a little different and then chopped them, you could get some really cool crystals out of these. Maybe in the not so near future, I will try to do a soap and intentionally not really intentionally, but I guess, yeah, make the swirl a little off like this, just a little on the chunky side, and then show you what happens when I cut them up to use as a crystal soap instead, to make a crystal soap instead of a regular loaf slice, and show you some of the results. I've found that out on accident before, in cutting one up because I thought I was going to melt it. I thought I was going to remelt it because the colors would have blended enough to where I could have used it for something else. But when I went to cut into it to chop it up, the swirls that were there were gorgeous. It was just so I ended up using that in something else. I just kind of made some small little gemstone pieces from those. I made smaller little cuts and faceted some of those and put them in another soap, and they were really cool. So just be aware there's other choices other than scrapping it completely, other than completely remelting it and putting it in something else. Sometimes it's just the cut that can make the difference. So we'll explore more of that. This, like I said, I'm re-recording because this is in a compilation video of Acorn Swirls. And I feel like out of the ones I've filmed, I've only done really one successful Acorn Swirl. However, I've had several successful soaps, some soaps that came out just stunning. And I may have been a little taken aback, or disappointed at first. Sometimes when you slice a soap and you're hoping for a swirl, and it's not quite a swirl, you might panic a little. But don't act immediately on that. Give yourself some time. Give yourself time to assess it and look at it. Have other people look at it. As you'll see, I do mention in the text here, and I'll mention it again. In the end, I ended up turning these over. I liked them better the upside down. I liked the white on top, and I went back and forth. I think I may have even posted in some soap groups to ask you which you liked better. I took some pictures of both, the black side up and the white side up, and I had overwhelming response that the lighter side looked better on top. And I feel like design wise that worked. Of course, you can always do this, and that's just fun. Just for fun, make your little Rorschach tests. Because when you're slicing up a swirl, sometimes you're going to have matching pieces like that, and they create a picture when you put them together. That's always fun. I really liked the streaks that the black kind of created in amongst the white. It just, you could tell that the white wasn't fully set up enough to to where it didn't flow through there. It flowed all the way to the bottom in some of those places, and because it was sort of set up, I feel like it gave it a really cool look. It was kind of streaky instead of a swirl, and I thought it looked really neat. Anyway, all of that was yammering about, don't get disheartened by mistakes. I think I've said that a lot recently because it's very easy to be disappointed in something you make, and you put, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in, not literally, but you've, a lot of time and effort in planning a soap and in choosing the right base and choosing the right colors and fragrances, all that stuff, planning, and then sometimes it just doesn't work out like you like. This is the one I ended up chopping here, but I thought the back, I don't like that side of it, but the back where it just had it was mostly black, but it had a tiny black little, pink and white little swirl coming up in the corner. And I don't know, it looked like little flames or something. I should have saved that, but I didn't. So, in the comments, if you've gotten this far in this compilation, I know it's got to be probably hours of swirls and swirl talk and swirl mistakes and swirl fixes and all that good stuff. But let me know first of all, let me know what your favorite was out of the swirls, and let me know what more you would like to see. I do plan for certain to do a compilation of my marbling technique videos, because that's a different way to get a swirl. I feel like it's a little bit easier and that you have a little bit more wiggle room. But I wanted to do the Acorn Swirl first because it's a little more straightforward. You pour one layer, you let it set up partially, get that thick skin, and you pour another layer and stir it with the back of a spoon. And then you do that again. And it usually comes out, even the bad ones come out kind of neat. So there we go with the Acorn Swirl. The marbling will be next. And like I said, that one gives you a little more freedom, in my personal opinion. If you know me, I like a little bit of wiggle room and freedom to create very artistic soaps. And I feel like that style of swirl gives it to me. There were other styles of swirl in here, the freestyle, or kind of like the drop swirl, but not really. It's hard to compare to the cold process soaps because they just don't. The base doesn't behave the same, but also, the results, it's going to be very, very difficult to get it to be the same. I am trying and experimenting with various techniques to get similar looks to the cold process swirls and designs and different techniques that they use. But some of the techniques are just techniques used in art in general. Of the acrylic swirl type, not swirl, acrylic pour type things that I've done with the tie-dye and with some of the other soaps you've seen me do and experiment with. I'm going to do more of those, but I have some other acrylic and resin techniques I want to try from the art world. And some of those are used by cold process soapers as well. They frequently, see a design done in an acrylic pour and say, hey, I bet we can do that with soap. And they do. And they have a little easier time of it because their soap doesn't set up quite so fast. And it's not quite as thin as ours is when it pours. That's part of the difficulty, is the viscosity of ours isn't what theirs typically is. So it doesn't behave in the same way. By the time ours is getting that thick, it's done. It's not going to move anymore because it's going to be set up. That is that image there to me from the tops, all 6 of those, that looks like the Chinese writing stone. But that is the look I really liked of these, that when I turned them upside down. And some of them I did back to back, so you could see this is what one looks like dark. This is the same soap with it the white side up. Same here. I go back and forth. If you see the black side up, then I'm just showing you the opposite side. There's that corner. That's the one I should have saved. But I didn't. I hope that you've enjoyed this compilation video. Please, like I said, let me know what you've learned, what you like, what you'd like to see in the near future from me. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. It really helps the channel. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.